Good evening and welcome to the April 4th, 2018 meeting of the Public Works Committee of the Abington Township Board of Commissioners. And may I have a roll call, please?
Mr. Tucker?
Here.
Hoffman?
Here.
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 Here. Thank you. Our first order of business this evening is to approve the minutes of the February 28th, 2018 Public Works Committee meeting. And may I have a motion to approve?
Motion approved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Are there any comments or corrections from members of the committee? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Public Works Committee this evening has one item of new business. This is PW 01-041218, and we are going to consider a motion to accept the lowest responsible bids and authorize the township manager to enter into contracts with the companies listed in the documents contained in our packet for the purchase of materials as listed on Bid Summary Exhibit 1, dated and attached hereto. Are there any questions from members of the committee? Any questions from my fellow commissioners? Any comments from staff or members of the audience? So hearing none, can I have a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. At this point, the Public Works Committee will entertain comments from members of the audience pertaining to general matters of Public Works.
Commissioner Hyper, before you close the meeting, I did have one thing.
Certainly, Commissioner Klein.
So I wanted the board to consider, we've received information from the manager about PECO's desire to, or their petition to raise rates. I would like the board to consider either at our board meeting next week or at the May meetings, a resolution to send to the Pennsylvania Public Utility Commission to turn down the rate increase until PECO has a comprehensive plan set forth that will fix their issues with infrastructure and will also address their inability to respond to large power outages in an efficient manner. As you know, many of the portions of the township, specifically relating to my ward because I lived through it, but I do know other wards dealt with the same situation. Power outages that lasted up to 8 days, and I was dismayed to see that they were looking for a rate increase. So I would like the board to consider a resolution to send to the Public Utility Commission. I've also spoken to the county commissioners, and they're looking for resolutions to, or would like to see support from municipalities. I'm going to reach out to the municipal organizations to see if they will circulate resolutions, but I would like the Abington Board of Commissioners to consider a resolution, as I believe that PECO's response in the last couple of storms was subpar compared to and they've gone downhill since Sandy. So,
thank you. There was discussion previously about PECO sponsoring a town hall meeting here in the community. Do we have any additional information about that?
Nothing more than what I received about a week ago, and I included in my last report, which is they're trying to figure that out. They're 3 to 4 weeks away. Okay. I could report now that I do still need to have meetings out in Harrisburg. Mm-hmm. Frankly, I was waiting for more information from PECO, but this would be in addition to that.
It would be in addition.
So if the committee would like to have a resolution, the solicitor and I could craft one for full board consideration next week if that's the committee's desire.
Would this be the proper committee for consideration of that?
I wasn't sure.
Well,
It really could be the full board. It could be the committee of one, meaning the full board. It could be the administrative code with anyone, public affairs. Frankly, there's no reason it couldn't be
Public Works either.
Right.
Well, since the matter's been raised.
It could be public safety as well, but.
Correct. I mean, as a utility, I mean, they are a utility.
Yep.
So I don't see any reason why you couldn't consider it in this committee.
Okay. Do members of the committee have any comments or reactions to Commissioner Klein's suggestion?
I couldn't agree more. Their response was unacceptable, and our job is to do our best to control what we can and take care of our residents. And they need to, PECO needs to, in my opinion, have a message sent to them that we as a governing body are not okay with the way that our residents were treated this winter.
Yeah, I would agree with you both. I think it's inappropriate for them to be pushing forward with a rate increase when they haven't yet fully answered the questions that we've raised here in Abington and other municipalities about the challenges that our residents have faced. And I think we should push to make that conversation happen in multiple ways, and this would be one of them. Commissioner Rothman.
And also, I know I've spoken with some of my fellow commissioners about this, and it is something I think we need to consider moving forward. But if PECO were to be raising rates in some sort of exchange for an infrastructure development plan where they were going to be developing wires underground or something along the lines of things that, will lead to less likelihood of having lengthy outages like this in the future, then that might be something that people are willing to absorb. And I can't speak for what it could be or without any more information, but it's certainly something where we need to be engaging in that. And I think that this first step, like Commissioner Klein mentioned, is sending the right message. So I think we should strongly consider a resolution. And if we're able to do it as soon as next week, then I don't see why we need to wait.
If I'm understanding correctly, what I'm hearing is a recommendation by Commissioner Klein to have the committee direct the township manager in consultation with the township solicitor to draft a resolution that would be in opposition of the application filed before the Public Utility Commission of Pennsylvania for a rate increase. Is that accurate?
Yes.
That's how I understand it as well, yes.
And I would like the resolution to at least mention the reasons why, and those are primarily the fact that the infrastructure has been let to go. And I'll bring up other examples. I mean, since Sandy, we've all dealt with it. We've had splices and rewiring connections throughout the entire system, both primary and secondary lines. And I know that in my ward, I still get frequent intermittent outages in minor rainstorms and, where people get flickering lights. And I think, and my assumption is that's basic, and it's gotten worse, that is primarily due to the fact that they don't go back and actually fix the infrastructure that they've spliced together during the storms. There's no follow through. And I think that they should be held to that standard prior to getting any kind of rate increase.
What I recommend, Mr. Hecker, is that once we've crafted that resolution, certainly you'll have it in advance, that any commissioner, if they wanted to add anything to it that's consistent with the motion, that they would send that to me. We can alter it
Yeah, I think
as
that's
appropriate.
reasonable. Commissioner Spiegman has a comment.
Thank you, Mr. Hecker. Mr. Manfredi, just to jump off of Commissioner Klein's point, subsequent to Sandy, which Commissioner Klein referenced, we had in February of 2014, we had the ice storm, which knocked out at maximum, I think, 93% of electrical service to the township. And subsequent to that, actually even during that recovery period, which had very significant problems and delays, PECO actually sent personnel here to this room to address the public and attempt to help. It wasn't always necessarily effective, and a lot of it was having a face for people to yell at, someone actually representing PECO. But it was helpful, and it was a direct and somewhat hands-on additional response besides all of the crews and all the visiting crews running around and doing repairs. In the time in between, there was, I know they did invest at least in wards 7 and 11 and in the Baderwood area. There was some investment in upgrades that helped reduce the instances of minor outages out of the blue, like when the wind blows, the power to Beta Road just goes out for 5 hours. Admittedly, that was successful to some extent. But as Commissioner Klein pointed out, this response was atrocious, and one of the most significantly troubling aspects, which I think should be addressed in the resolution, was the lack of communication. That was one of the single biggest complaints, besides my power's been off for 5 days, is my power's been off for 5 days. I can't get a hold of anyone at PECO. I can't get any answers. Every time I get an estimated restoration time, it changes at the very last minute by 48 or 72 hours. And this was just really infuriating to everyone, I think all of us included. So if that could also be incorporated.
So just to be clear, a lack of communication between PECO, the entity, or their customer service people and the residents themselves
Yes.
in trying to get restoration times.
Yes, and also I'll add, I actually found it more difficult getting information from PECO this time around than I did in the case of the ice storm. And again, that's 4 years ago, so. Thank you.
You're welcome. Do other commissioners want to weigh in? Commissioner Shriver.
Yeah, another question I would have for PECO is they do send people here, and I understand that, but do they have, and I don't even know what to call this, some kind of rapid response, like a trailer or something? You know, we have set up places for people to go in and get warm or to charge their cell phones or something, but it seems to me that they would have some kind of big trailer or whatever it might be that they can bring that would have charging stations and things to communities where they are not able to put the power back on for several days. And so I just have never heard about anything like that, so I want to know if they have more resources that we are not learning about.
Okay.
Any other comments or questions from the board? Okay, so the idea is we would have this on the agenda for next week's board meeting for consideration by the full board.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
And if not, there'll be a reason as to why not.
Thank you, Commissioner Acker.
Thank you. With that, I think we will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved?
Thank you.
Call to order the Administrative Code and Land Use Committee for April 4th, 2018, and may I have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Sanchez?
Here.
Brodsky?
Here.
Gillespie?
Here.
Becker?
Here.
Thompson?
First, we will have a motion to approve the minutes of the February 28th, 2018 Administrative Code and Land Use Committee meeting, and I so move.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any comments or corrections? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Minutes are approved. We will start off with ACL 1, and this is a matter of unfinished business. Consider approving the land development application submitted by ABH Builders Incorporated for the vacant property located at 1043 Easton Road, Abington, PA 19001. And I believe the applicant is here. Your name and for the record, please, sir.
Good evening. My name is Arthur Hurling with ABH Builders. We met last month, and since then, met with staff and made some minor revisions to the plan. We put together a landscape plan with proposed trees, and we added sidewalk along the frontage of the property on Easton Road. Other than that, based on the last review letter, we appear to be compliant with all the items.
Thank you. And Mr. Penical, it's now zoning, or Ms. Montgomery, it's now zoning compliant?
Yes, sir, it is. The parking spaces have been revised to comply.
Thank you. Any comments from commissioners in the committee? Commissioner Gillespie.
I do have a question. If I could read this, I'd be, I'm looking at this picture and can't even figure it out. But anyway, in back, for the properties on Edge Hill Road, you will have some kind of a buffer there, plants, trees?
There's a proposed fence, yeah, but in addition to trees, there's a proposed privacy fence around
Okay.
the property's
Okay.
entirety.
Someone had asked me about that. Thank you.
Yeah.
And sir, you've had an opportunity to review the comments of the Planning Commission.
Yes.
Those would be acceptable conditions if we were to condition
Yes.
an approval this evening. Any other commissioners on the questions? Commissioner Spiegelman, did you have an item from?
I did, it's, and I apologize for springing this on you, as I mentioned offline, I literally just received an email from a neighbor a nearby neighbor on Edge Hill who backs up to this property and had expressed, he expressed some concerns via email before, which I had forwarded to you and Mr. Manfredi and Mr. Penical. I'm actually still parsing this, but I know he has a list of concerns, so that's something I'm going to share with, again, with you, Mr. Manfredi and Mr. Penicow. But it literally just came in.
Thank you. Any other, Commissioner Klein?
Yeah. It's hard to read the plan, and I'm looking at the three-dimensional presentation you have there, but are you adding sidewalks onto the property?
Yes.
Okay. And it's hard to read the land, or any of these plans, and the landscape plan. Has the landscape plan been reviewed for its buffers, the required buffers, up against adjacent properties?
Yes, it has, and it does comply.
Okay, thank you.
And Manager Manfredi.
Mr. Sanchez, well, first of all, I see Commissioner, so I'll defer to the Commissioner.
Commissioner Vega.
Thank you. In reviewing what was presented to the commissioners in the packet on Friday, I see the comments from our township staff and the county commission about what needs to be done to make it fully compliant, but I can't tell from what's been presented to me that that actually is the case. I take you at your word that that is true, but if, you know, I'm not voting tonight, obviously not on the committee, but if I'm going to vote to approve this next week, I need to see something that shows that those changes have been incorporated.
Candidly, I'm sorry, Mr. Sanchez, that's where I was going.
Go ahead.
I think that the applicant has worked with our departments, our staff, but I thought that there was supposed to be a presentation made visually that showed all of these details, not just, because we went through this last time, that there needs to be something that not only the commissioners but the public can actually see up on the screens of the details of the plans, the landscape plans, something that everyone can understand what this is actually going to do, not just the nuts and bolts behind the scenes, but so that people can understand what this project really is. I think that's to the
Yeah, we
commissioners.
submitted that, I guess, a couple weeks ago for, I guess, I'm not sure if you guys get it before the meetings.
But it's your responsibility to prepare the PowerPoint or to prepare those slides and to present them, not staff's.
Okay. Well, I didn't get a second review from the staff, but it was my understanding it does comply.
Let me be more specific. Do you have slides and PowerPoints and other pictures, so to speak, that you
I have a
could,
rendering of the elevation and what I've submitted.
landscape plan and the layout of the complete site and all of those things that you could put onto a PDF that we can put when you come back next week
I
up
can
for
do that.
everyone to see so that
Yeah.
everyone can understand and have a greater understanding of what exactly you're doing?
Okay.
I think that would be beneficial.
Yeah, we can do that.
Might I also suggest that you have the civil engineer also present so that he can explain the plan, unless you are versed enough to understand what you're explaining, because, I mean, there are some questions, and if we're going to be putting it up there, I'd like to see the plan also.
Okay. Do you have
And I'd like to
specific-
have the civil engineer,
Okay.
well, I can't read the plan, so,
Okay.
you know, blow it up, I can't read the writing, so.
Mr. Hurling, is that something you could bring next week if we were
Yeah,
to?
we'll put a PDF together, or a site plan together, we can blow it up on the screen.
I mean, we would, I think, be inclined to pass it along without a recommendation, but for next week, and then
Right.
all
No
reassemble
problem.
and do this one more time. And I think there was a question, some other documentation that might be needed, the professional services agreement, if that's consideration or an escrow fee needed, and you could work that out in between that time as well.
Sure.
All right, well, then I would,
It'll be definitely something we understand,
yeah,
right?
some,
Not
yeah,
this-
something understandable. Okay, great. Well, with that, I would make a motion that we pass it along to the full board for next week with those items for full consideration without recommendation at this time, and I so move.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor of passing it along without recommendation? Oh, yes, I'm sorry. Any comments from the public on this application? Mr. Hurling, if you could yield for the resident there.
Yeah.
Laura Lehman, 1431 Bryant Lane. Again, with this, as with every single project, would you please put up a single page so that residents can check into that page, get the links, and get the PDF that you're going to present in case they missed the meeting? Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. All right, seeing no other residents, All those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries, and
Thank
we'll
you.
see you next Thursday.
All right.
Thank you. Okay, next item, an item of new business. This is ACL 2. Consider approving the land development application by Abington Friends School. And I see the Friends team here. Gentlemen, if you could identify yourselves and
Sure, while we're
Proceed.
getting the PowerPoint connected. My name is David Haas from Duane Morris, law firm representing Abington Friends School on this application for land development. With me this evening is Richard Norrie, who's the head of school at Abington Friends School, and also Michael Rufo of Anchor Management, who is a major consultant on the development project. I'm going to ask, once we have the PowerPoint set up, ask Mr. Norrie to address the board this evening to give you an overview of the project so you have an idea as to what this entails, and then we'll ask Mr. Rufo to get into some of the specifics of each of these slides in response to a number of issues that have been discussed with the township, issues in the staff letter from Mr. Pennecow and also from the county. We had a good meeting before the Planning Commission. They, in your packet, I believe, for the meeting tonight, includes recommendation for approval. We'll get into some of the items that were in that particular letter later. And we also had a successful variance approval from the zoning board with respect to certain components, which will also be described in the presentation. So with that, I'll turn this over to Richard Norrie and let him describe the project.
Good evening, friends. Good to see you, and thanks for making some time for us tonight. I'm Rich Norrie, the head of school. I've been at Abington Friends School for 13 years, and I want to do a quick overview for you of the school and the project that we're looking at together. So we're Abington Friends School. We've been on our same site in Jenkintown, in Abington Township, for 321 years.
Is that all?
And we have a beautiful campus that we're pleased to share very freely with our neighbors. We're very pleased with the relationship we have with many organizations around us, our local residential neighborhoods. We serve as a voting site as well, and we're pleased to provide those types of public services. We have a 50-acre campus, including our 321-year-old meeting house, a creek and a meadow. We've done a lot of environmental work in the last several years, including a multi-$100,000 grant with the TTF watershed folks to restore, repair, and install a 300-plus tree and vegetation riparian buffer that was a major part of our curriculum. Last year, we opened the Headwaters Discovery Playground, which has been named as one of the top 5 outdoor learning sites in the world. We're pleased to have that open to the public every day of the week. And we have a campus arboretum, too. We were the first school in Pennsylvania to have our campus declared an arboretum in this past year. We've been working with our neighbors and with the township pretty intensely over the last 6 months or so around this project. We started with 4 meetings with our neighbors in November. We invited everyone to come to a variety of times so that they could understand the project. We could hear their questions and concerns, and we were pleased to do that. We've had a number of meetings with the township. We sent an update letter to our neighbors inviting them for more information as the project developed and as the timeline for breaking ground grew closer as we raised the funds for the project. And now we've made our way through the zoning process with unanimous approval. We had a letter of unanimous support from Jenkintown Borough Council, which we were pleased to get after presenting to Jenkintown Borough Council about a month ago. And now we're here in the process. I wanted to give you a sense of our kind of master plan. We're driven by strategic plans that we engage in about every 10 years. And right now, we're at the completion of a 7-year plan that had a number of programmatic elements to it, and then these campus improvements. But I do want to take you back to 2004, which is when we had a major expansion to our academic facilities. We have a beautiful new library that's the centerpiece of our campus. We expanded our upper school classroom space at that time. At the time, we prioritized academics over our athletics as the most important strategic issue for the school. Since then, we've made a number of smaller improvements on the campus, including some of the outdoor classroom and playground work. But the next major initiative is a gymnasium and athletic upgrade. We have an outstanding academic program, outstanding arts program for which we're well known, but our facilities for athletics have been long overdue. This is the 50th year of our Hallowell Gymnasium. It looks every bit its age. We've gotten our money's worth from it. It's in use every single day of the week and every evening by community groups, and we want to improve these facilities for our own program, for the benefit of the community, and also to ensure our vitality in enrollment. We are one of the most diverse student populations in the Philadelphia region and, in fact, in the country, socioeconomically, racially, by neighborhood, by zip code, by family structure. We give away almost $6 million in tuition assistance a year, and the only way that we can sustain that kind of diversity is strong enrollment. And so this is a strategic priority for us as well, in addition to the program and community aspects. What we propose is to take the site of the current Hallowell Gym, which is in orange there, that's our 50-year-old facility, and expand that facility, and then take an existing soccer field, our varsity soccer field on the corner of Washington Lane and Greenwood Avenue, and put in a turf field that can stand up to 3 seasons of heavy use by both us and our neighbors, and a track which will support a successful track program that we have right now that has no track. In fact, our kids wear a t-shirt that says AFS track, no problem. But they run all over our campus, including our hallways in the wintertime, and it's time to give them the real facility. And we know that these facilities are wonderful for neighbors as well, for walking, for exercise, and to draw people into a really nice green space on our campus. The turf field itself is important because so many neighborhood groups and youth associations use our fields. We're really limited by the way that weather affects those conditions and the wear and tear on the field. This will help us serve our program in the community better. The athletic facility itself is a really wonderful upgrade. It includes, to the right, 2 full-size basketball courts, and then a full-size competition court that runs the length of the building when you combine the two. This will have a profound impact on our scheduling. Right now, because we have the one gym on this location, our kids are practicing till 9 o'clock at night because we have to stack practices on top of each other. Our PE program in the middle school has to start during the academic day, our athletics program. This will change our campus program quite a bit and, again, serve the community better. It includes a fitness facility, a multi-purpose room, a lobby, above-ground locker rooms, coaching rooms, and it's just a wonderful addition to our campus. Here's a rendering of the building. You can see that it's an all-masonry building. It's going to be a 75-year facility. It's clad in stone to match the rest of our beautiful campus and to maintain some of the historical character. We think it'll be a major upgrade to views onto our campus by our neighbors as well. And there's the entrance with the gym on the right and the fitness facility on the left. This gives you a sense of what a track and field next to that facility will be like, including the lighting standards that have been part of this plan, so that we can extend the use of the field for us and for the community till 9 o'clock at night, especially during the fall when we have those early darknesses after the clocks change. We don't anticipate significant expanded use of this facility. We simply want to make good use of what will be a major investment for us. Right now, we've raised the $9 million. We've raised over $8 million on the $9 million project for the gym, and so we're ready to begin that project as soon as we complete these processes. It's another $3 million project to do the track and the field together, and that is something that we hope to be successful at, but it will take us some time to raise that additional $3 million. But the site plan draws all these together. In terms of what's next for our campus, we do plan, if we're successful with this effort, to go on to do some renovations of our art swing, our theater, to create a new choral room over there, and then we're entering a new strategic planning process this coming year that'll help us define the future a little bit more clearly. But that's an overview, and I want to turn things over to Mike Rufo, who can answer technical questions and take you through some of the issues that we've been working through carefully with the township.
Thank you, Mr. Norrie.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. My name's Mike Rufo. I'm with Anchor Management Group. I do a lot of private school project development, planning, oversee the architecture, engineering, and really just bring the kind of the quarterback of the team, brings the project together. So as Rich said, the school has been on a plan, master plan since 2001, and this is just another step of it. And the school in itself is really, really collaborative. This project's no different. I think we got out to the neighbors early. We introduced the project. We listened to concerns. Recently, we're working with Public Works, and Public Works has 3 projects coming up that don't all affect this project, but I think that they wanted to be assured that we were going to work with them. They got 3 things coming over the next, I guess, 4 years. And there's some grant money that they have coming to them that they'd like to make sure we're working with. One of them is some stormwater work that's going to happen on the along Greenwood Avenue that will alleviate Lake Erie or Lake Washington down there along the corner of Washington. So that stormwater, that stormwater is happening down low. I guess this isn't showing the whole thing, huh? But is going to be all along the, I'm sorry, there it is. So all along Greenwood here, and tie into some existing facilities down in the corner, none of which it has to do with our property. And I think this came up at the last meeting. I think it's important to know. Our property is below that watershed that is causing that water issue up along this corner here. So what we're doing on our campus is is infiltration and storage that is going to relieve the water problem that is on our campus, but will not address that problem there, nor could we because it's above us. But this project will, and we're 100% behind supporting that. In addition to that, they have a nature trail. I guess it's a combination nature trail and alternate transportation trail that they're working on a grant for. And I only bring up the alternate transportation because it makes that trail a little wider. And that will come down along the Greenwood and turn and go down along Washington. There are some challenges there that we're going to have to work through. We did meet with Public Works last week. And again, I think the school is committed 100%, and I think Rich would confirm that we're committed 100% to work with them to make sure that that works for everyone. The campus, the intent of this project is to keep the campus open so it's inviting and invite people on it. So it really makes sense for us to work with them and have that done. The third grant that they're working on, it's probably a little further out that we don't have a lot of information on yet, is the triangle up here along Meeting House and getting rid of the Triangle Road and doing some improvements up along that intersection at Meeting House Road. Again, met with them. They haven't done any engineering yet. The school is committed 100% again to work with them and make sure that we can make that become a reality, a little safer spot. But we'll have to dig into those details as we get a little further. I mentioned briefly the stormwater management. We looked at the stormwater management a couple ways on our project because we're concerned that we're going to have to phase this and do just the field house while we raise money for the track and field. But that will be, if we do just the field house, that'll be accomplished through some rain garden work and storing the water again on our campus and infiltrating it. We do have a little bit of some pipe work to relocate, but it's really not a large stormwater management because the addition to the building is not all that large. There is, we are repurposing the structure that's there. The overall plan for stormwater management is to do it all underneath the field. So when that phase 2 does happen, we're hoping it all happens at once and we don't have to stage it, but when that does come on, we'll put an infiltration bed underneath the field, or a storage bed, excuse me, underneath the field, big stone bed, open grade stone that will take the water. Well, the ground does not percolate very well in the area, so we're going to have to storm a little extra water, and then we will control the rate of discharge. That will still discharge down along the into the culvert that is down along the road there that is existing today. Our system will help this, the rate reduce by about 75%. So at the end of the day, we're going to be helping the stormwater issue down lower on the campus in a great way. Township review letter, we did receive a township review letter. I don't think there's anything on that review letter that we had any concern with. You know, working in a right-of-way, we actually don't have any. The track and field proximity to the roadway, we worked with Mr. Penicle and its adjacencies and think that we have it situated properly. As-built drawings, no increase in sanitary sewer. The facility, the gymnasium facility that we're building is just a little more generous, locker rooms that actually work and so on, but there is no more restroom facilities being added. There's no more toilets, so we don't have a concern there. We were asked about baseball long-term plans. There are several conversations going on with a couple of the community institutions, Penn State and Manor College and such. So when we build the field, the multi-purpose field, baseball will wind up somewhere else. We're just working those details out right now. The waivers, I think we got everything that we needed. They came up last week. Rain garden details were provided, and we'll make sure that the township is satisfied with those. The fire lane, we did talk to the fire marshal, and he's comfortable with our approach around the building. We have a building that is coming down on the back of the campus, on the back in here, and that will become green space and part of our upper school quad area back in there. And then last but not least is safety netting. There was a recommendation, and it actually came out of the Planning Commission meeting last week, to put safety netting down the whole length of the new field. And let me see if I can get to a slide there. So right now, what we have proposed is safety netting down the sides 40 feet and across the back here. And we have the same thing down the sides here and across the back. We had some conversation last week, and then it came back into the letter that they're asking for netting all the way down the side there. I think there's a couple of issues there. I've probably put in 50 or 60 of these fields. I've never enclosed a field like that. We do study pretty strongly, and that's, 15 years ago when I put them in, we didn't put the netting down the sides. It was only across the back. But with kids and lacrosse balls and the way they shoot today, we know that that's a concern. So we have adjusted our thought process and have got this to a point where we believe, with the goals being down in here, that angled shots and such, that we think we have created a really safe environment now with what we have. We've worked really, really hard. The school's committed not to put fencing up around the campus. We by right could put fencing down along here and kind of close the campus in. We've been conscious to keep it open. We've been conscious to invite the neighbors in. And I think that's the second piece that will really, putting a net up in there is just not going to work right. Number one, for the school, the track won't operate right, because when there's track meets, kids are coming on and off the track there to run, number one. And number two, I think it's going to, the welcoming piece of it is really going to be affected by that. And, the most important thing, we believe we have the safety aspect of having netting on this field covered. So that is the thing that we will be working on.
I just want to add one other thing. In the letter was a statement about... I'm sorry. Sure. Yeah. One other thing I'd want to add is that in the letter from the township staff, there was a mention of the fact that the track was too close to Greenwood Avenue. That's a regulation track. There is no other place where the track could be placed, and the track can't be any smaller, otherwise it's not going to fulfill its needs. So I just wanted to clarify that that was one of the other items in the letter, which wasn't a requirement, it was just a recommendation, but it's something that we can accommodate and has been part of what we've demonstrated throughout the process, zoning hearing, planning commission, et cetera.
Thank you.
So from the township side, I think, we're in a pretty good spot with the comments. County review, stormwater details, building facade details, we are developing them. The stormwater details, we go through county conservation, and obviously the township will make sure that they're covered. The building facade had a certain requirement for percentage of glazing on the building facing the road, we meet that and actually far exceed that. Our separation on the building and the linear footage that we're allowed to have and all, we're well under. So we're in a really good spot there. The phasing master plan facility, Rich touched on earlier. Access to the site, there was a question about the access to the site only being 24 feet. I demonstrated last meeting, it's actually 33. That Washington Lane is actually a 33-foot cartway. So we actually meet that, and that was recognized in the last meeting. And then the landscape and buffer, I believe we will address that in our plan. We will meet all those requirements. So I think that we have that we're in a really good place with the county as well. We do have lighting planned on this field. We got zoning relief for that. I think it's important to elaborate a little bit on this. So this being the field, Washington Lane being here and Greenwood being here, the relief we needed were for 3 poles down here along the along this side of the field. There's 2 80-foot poles here and 3 70-foot poles here. I just want to point out that that at this point out here, the kind of black line, we go to a 0.1 foot candle, which is equal to moonlight. So the technology, and the reason that I think it's important to bring this up is the technology has gotten so good in the last 5 to 7 years with lighting. When I started in the industry, 25 years ago doing fields, we threw light at the field. We threw as much light at the field as we could, and we wanted it as diverse and everywhere we could get it so that we could illuminate the field. Today's technology is doing the exact opposite. We're all LED. The optics are factory aimed, so they're taking dime-shaped optics and shooting it at a field specifically where we want it, and it's eliminating all the overspill. It's eliminating all the glare and quite frankly all the light pollution that I probably created for the first 10 years of my career. So. And here's the evolution of the fixture itself. This is kind of late 70s. This is what we used, and then we started to work with shields. This is the fixture that we're presenting, that we're proposing for this project. The light throws straight down at the field. It's directed, and as you can see in the evolution of these poles here, it's pretty substantial upgrade.
Mr. Rufo, there was a condition imposed by the zoning code that they'll be turned off at 9 p.m. Is that? That
was accepted, yes, sir.
Thank you.
Can I add on to just one question with that? Of course. Are they going to be on every day, or are they only going to be used when the fields are being used?
Yeah. So along with that technology, and thanks for bringing that up, these lights literally have a computer-based program that allows us to control them. We can control them from an iPhone, from anywhere in the world, anywhere you have access to the internet from the iPhone. So the school, a lot of public fields and stuff, they light them when it gets dark, and they stay on until 9 o'clock at night or 10 o'clock, whether the tennis court's being used or not. This will be worked on a schedule. It'll be rare that they're on till 9 o'clock, quite honestly. What this is going to do is in the winter months, the early winter months, is help our teams, instead of having 40-minute practices, help them have an hour and a half practice and get them, it'll go into 6:30, 7 o'clock at night, but only on those nights they're practicing. If there happens to be a game, which there are not night games in the league, in the Friends League, they're all afternoon games, we don't anticipate them being on at night. Now, I'm sure there'll be community use that may have them on, but they will be turned on a scheduled basis, not put on all the time. So that's pretty much an overview of what we have and what we're thinking in the project. We're really excited about it. I think we've done our due diligence, and I'd like to thank the township. The input and collaboration has been really refreshing to get through here.
Thank you. Thank you for the very comprehensive presentation as well. Any questions from Commissioner Hecker?
Thank you, Commissioner Sanchez. Appreciate it. This was a terrific presentation, and it looks to be a fantastic project. One of the questions that came up both in Mr. Norrie's letter and in the County Planning Commission review was the issue of the landscaping buffer and trees. And I didn't see what the resolution was in the packet, and I was wondering if you could speak to where you got to with that issue.
Sure. Well, in consultation with the neighbors and the borough and the township, our neighbors appreciate being able to see into our campus. It enhances their view. So rather than have a barrier that makes that view impermeable, they prefer that there be some permeability so that they enjoy the space of our neighborhood and the kind of beauty of the campus. And so, as I mentioned, we had planted a very significant riparian buffer with the TTF folks, and I think what we would like to do is meet the requirements for planting, but do it in such a way that doesn't create a wall and doesn't create kind of a blight, frankly, for the neighbors who are just directly across the street. So, we have a plan. We'll be happy to share that plan. But that's some of the thinking behind it.
Well, that's very helpful, and it's terrific that they've engaged the neighbors in this.
Yeah, another point was when we met with the township expressed concern about security and didn't feel that it was wise to have this wall of trees because it allows for someone to hide behind those areas rather than have them be open.
Yeah, it makes good sense. Thank you.
One other point, I don't want to make the points for you, but you did mention it, Mr. Norrie, at the beginning. It's actually a living arboretum, which is the place, which has a great, as far as a plug, a great intensive map of, interactive map, I should say, with the tree species and the landscaping features of the site. So really a beautiful thing. Commissioner Thompson.
Thank you. Just wanted to thank you for the lighting analysis. It's really helpful, good to see. And thank you for the hard work that you put into selecting the fixtures. They're actually really environmentally sensitive and friendly, and they seem to be pretty dark sky compliant, which kind of leads me to my next question, which is this a LEED project?
It is not a LEED per se project. Quite honestly, I've done a bunch of LEED projects. I don't do just athletics. I've done school buildings, and I have a number of LEED gold under my belt. It's expensive. Not on the construction side of it. We're committed to spending the money there. But to get that plaque that looks like this to hang on our wall, it's very expensive to do. So we're committed to this sustainable approach. We're committed to sustainability as an ongoing operation of the school. Quite frankly, at this point, we're not going to spend the money to go through the process of LEED, the LEED certification, and what that takes. It takes a lot from our engineers, it takes a lot from our architects, and quite honestly, you pay LEED themselves a lot of money for them to review. So sustainability is first and foremost in a lot of what we are designing and thinking here, but the truth of the matter is we're not going to spend that money there.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Well, we're going to call for public comment in a moment, sir. If you could just hang tight. Any other commissioners? I just want Mr. Rufo and Mr. Norrie, you would be, if we imposed as conditions our Township Planning Commission letter minus the one condition for the netting, you would be amenable to that, I believe, from what your statements. Okay, great. Mr. Pennicow, I saw you make a motion earlier of, no, not.
Now, I just wanted to bring to your attention that from a landscaping standpoint, when we looked at this, we took into consideration the riparian buffer work that was done out here. And the other reason we were looking at relocating some of the trees that should have been around the perimeter buffer is part of the project that's being done with the trails program with the township. There's going to require an 8-foot wide walkway in there. We didn't want to have trees planted this year or next year that maybe have to be moved in a year.
Great point, thank you. Okay. Well, with that, I would, I'm sorry, Mr. Haas.
I just want to make sure we're clear about what that one statement is in the condition number 1 of the recommendation of the Planning Commission, where it refers to the March 9th letter, the items that we had identified earlier, which we weren't able to address, which had been suggestions, but we're not able to move the track. And the other was the recommendation about the netting. Those 2 items would not be conditions that we would expect to be able to comply with.
Understood.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yep.
Do you know what the dimension is of the track from the roadway? About how far away is it?
25 to the right-of-way, and then there's a right-of-way. It's about 25 feet from the right-of-way, and then there's, I believe, the same right-of-way, so
Okay.
like 50, 54 feet to the right-of-way.
It's consistent with the existing field conditions.
It actually, the field is removed from the road by the width of the track. Now, the track, the track and its runoff and buffer is about 24 feet. The field is about where the outside of that was. So we're actually, that track is creating a buffer to the field, to the road from the field.
Okay.
Probably be appropriate if I made the motion and then we take the public comment as that. So I would make a motion that we approve the land development application with the conditions set by the Planning Commission, except as modified in the statement of Mr. Haas for item number 1, and also the netting condition number 4, modified as was described in the presentation. And I so move.
Seconded.
Been moved and seconded. Well, actually, I'm sorry, before we vote, I'd like to hear from the resident. I know he's been waiting patiently. Sir, if you would approach and your name and address.
I'm a 40-year resident on Fair Acres Road. My son went to Abington Friends School, and I'm very happy with the school. One of the questions I had partially has been answered to the lighting. Of course, our houses on Fair Acres Road face, our backyards face the school where they're going to build a track. And we have a place in Avalon, and they put in these poles in Avalon, and I have a picture on that. I don't know if anybody can see it, but these poles are not 80 feet high, but they're an eyesore. I don't know if anybody can see it or if I can send it, but they're really an eyesore. These poles are not 80 feet high.
See that?
So you can see how high the houses are.
Sir, if you could not talk when you're not near the microphone, because it won't show up on the TV.
They put in a whole new electrical system in Avalon, and they put these poles in that are like 65 feet high, and they're really not very cosmetically pleasing. And I was wondering two things. One of my problems, one of the questions I had was answered by the gentleman here, which was very good, that the lighting is going to be, so it won't back up into our houses. But the second thing is that, can these poles be lowered any so that they're not an eyesore from the people who live on that street? That's my question. I've been there for 40 years, and I've been very happy with Abington Friends School. My son went there, and my other son was a counselor there. But I just was concerned about that.
It's a good question. I'll let Mr. Rufo speak with you.
So I appreciate your comment. A couple things. I'm very familiar with Avalon and the high tension line project that they did down there. Very different. We have this is a recreational lighting pole, and I'm disappointed I had a chance to work with my arts and crafts, but I had, for one of the earlier meetings, I had cut out a circle of what the pole is that we're actually working with. And the base of the pole is a 17-inch pole. It's no bigger than that. And the top of it goes as narrow as 6 inches at the top. So they're really, really streamlined poles. The poles that are in Avalon are octagon poles. They're 38 to 42-inch transmission poles, and they have them about every 100 feet. They're designed to carry tension of wires that have ice on them and stuff. So the structure is probably 3 times what we're talking about. We're talking a much more streamlined pole. As far as lowering them, we actually added and cost money to do so because we wanted to be sensitive to it. We put 3 poles on the roadside as opposed to 2 so that we could lower them. And we lowered them to 70 feet, which is the recommended minimum that you put them in. And we added the 3rd pole so that we didn't have to throw the light so far, but that we could direct it and use the technology that we're given to actually direct that light straight down. If we bring those poles down to 40 feet, I actually have a slide that I can show you. It's, maybe I don't. My assistant isn't here tonight, so I probably blocked out the slides that are backing me up. But the lower the pole, so if you take it down to 40 feet, we'd have to throw that light across the field. So we're taking something that's looking like this, and you can't see the palm of my hand, to looking like that to try to throw that light, which then you can see the palm of my hand. So it's very deliberate that we're high with what we have. It's very deliberate that we added that third pole. And the structure of these poles are really not overbearing, and I am sensitive to that. I'm in Townsend's Inlet, so I play tennis over there. I'm really sensitive to what they did there. It's not the greatest. Yeah, and it's understandable. Yeah. This is very, very, very different structural element.
The poles are 70 feet tall?
The three along the roadway are 70 foot, sir. The two on the other side of the field are 80.
80 foot, okay.
Yeah.
And they're LED fixtures?
They are LED fixtures.
How long do they last?
25-year unconditional guarantee.
Okay.
So.
And when the fixture wears out, you're replacing the entire pole?
No, the fixtures are, the heads themselves are replaceable.
Okay.
Thank you. And hopefully that addressed the questions of the resident. Yep. Any other residents with comments on this application or questions? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Congratulations, gentlemen. Thank you. Okay, the next order of business, ACL 3, is to consider a motion to authorize the township manager and township solicitor to develop a revised draft ordinance that amends the appropriate ordinances to regulate noise and reduce the hours of operation for activities that interfere with residents' ability to enjoy the use of their property. I know this is slated as my item. I've enlisted Solicitor Lauren Gallagher to help me out a little bit with this. These items, just to be clear on the position and the posture of this all, we have noise ordinances in the township, of course, and they have, over the years, with good intent, they've been scattered into different sections of the code, as they might naturally be. And I think that the enforcement of it has been always interpreted as basically, any noise, 7 a.m. to 9 p.m., no matter what the noise is generating from and what the cause of it, of course, with exceptions for emergency work. So a while ago, and then I never moved it forward, I asked the solicitor's office to put this all together and to try to clean this up a little bit in our codes. And also with the start of maybe moving the morning hours back a little bit on the weekends, in particular Saturday and Sunday, because when the times of open windows come for that short window that we have in this region, we'll get some some complaints about the noise violation and where that stands with that neighbor that likes to fire up the lawnmower at 6 a.m. on a Saturday or Sunday. So again, not seeking dramatic changes here, but wanted to get the feedback in a true working session here of the board of whether the hours were acceptable to people. I don't think we would have to change much of the, there was an early ordinance in its full form here, Ordinance 814, which specifically addresses, I guess, sound trucks. Correct me if I'm wrong on any of this, Ms. Gallagher.
That's correct.
So we probably wouldn't have to touch that, but the other items, like I said, were the hours. I'd also like, I'm not sure if it made it, there were a couple provisions in the zoning code. These may have actually been changed by the revised zoning code since we adopted the new code a couple of years ago, but I'd like to eliminate the acreage size for the deliveries and trash, there was a 10-acre exception in some areas, commercial areas. That noise would carry over to adjoining residential areas too. So, again, I know I'm jumping a bit here. This is not, we're not ready to advertise this yet. This is a true sort of, let's get some feedback and wanted to take the temperature of the board. So we could bring a true draft ordinance, advertise it, and then hopefully move forward to making some modifications. So did I leave anything out of that?
There is a section that we drafted in this ordinance, so the current version of the ordinance has the noise permitted essentially between 7 a.m. and 9 p.m. And what we did was we made that Monday through Friday, and then on weekends and holidays, we backed that up to 9 a.m. Again, it's up to the board what time frame they would want to see. It just has to be reasonable under the law. We did add in a special use permit procedure in here, so that someone knows that they're going to have particularly loud events. If there's a 5K event or something that's going to involve loudspeakers, they can submit that application to the township in advance, and it'll be reviewed by police and fire to make sure that everything is consistent with the code and that we're able to make individuals aware of it. But other than that, I think you covered all the other changes.
Manager Manfredi.
Commissioner, just for the committee members and the other board members present, and if you'll forgive the Easter reference, but you resurrected this ordinance from several years ago, and what the draft that she's referring to and that you're referring to is several years old. It's only in the binder, meeting binder, for people's information and edification. It's not a recent draft, it's an old draft.
That's correct.
And it's in very rough form.
Commissioner Gillespie.
I do, thank you. Just on the weekend hours, I think 9's a little late.
A little late?
Late. I think at least.
AM or
should be
PM?
9 in the morning.
The AM.
AM. Yeah, most people that have, there's landscapers that want to get started. There's people that want to work.
Commissioner Thompson.
We're pushing back the hours of trash pickup from 6 a.m. to 7 a.m. Is that going to have any effect on sanitation?
So this is actually a part of the zoning code, so this would only apply to certain zoning districts.
Okay.
And this is the old zoning code, so I'd have to compare and see which zoning districts it would affect.
Okay.
But this is intended to be for commercial trash pickup.
So not township trash pickup?
Correct.
Okay. And the special exception for the noise, when they apply for that special exception, does that get circulated to the neighborhood, or how does that work?
It doesn't have a provision in here for that. We can certainly require the applicant to notify neighbors that would be affected. That's certainly something we can certainly add in if the permit is granted. But it does require review by police and fire.
Okay.
Commissioner Vahey.
So what's in our packet is Exhibit A. That's not been drafted recently?
I believe this was drafted in 16.
Exhibit A is not what we're...
It's just a rough draft.
Okay.
So we would revise it to be consistent with the current versions of the zoning code and such.
Okay, because my only, like for example, commercial operations, which I would imagine be the Hengels and McCoy crew in my neighborhood at all hours of the week, it would not appear to be covered by what's drafted here.
I'm sorry, what section are you at?
Section K.
Mm-hmm.
So it gives weekend hours, but doesn't give anything for weekday hours. And I mean, it seems like we're all operating under a gentleman's agreement that's 7 to 3, which, I guess is fine. But I don't see anything in here that would cover that.
I think that may have just been a strike. I think that was intended to be not during the week.
Okay.
Not weekdays 7 to 9, and then adding the weekends, or changing the weekends to 9 to 9. Correct me if I'm wrong on that, but.
Yeah, the intent was just to change the weekend hours.
Okay.
And it's kind of an awkwardly worded section because it talks about all these things being operated in such a way, such volume, or to annoy or destroy or disturb the quiet comfort or repose of any person.
Right.
So.
Does that satisfy your
Well,
concern?
I mean, it's not really a problem. I mean, it seems like the crews are operating within reasonable hours, but if we're going to undertake a thorough rewrite of the noise ordinance, I think we need to be clear about what the hours are during the week in which they can be
Certainly.
making noise. Thank you.
Certainly.
We agree, John. Yep. Commissioner Gillespie.
Does this include, maybe I'm missing it, so like if you're having a gathering at your house?
So there are general provisions that essentially, they state, shall be unlawful for any person to make, continue, or cause to be made or continued any loud, unnecessary, or unusual noise, which a noise disturbs, injures, or endangers the comfort, repose, health, peace, or safety of others within the township limits. So it's a bit of a subjective standard. We have done the research, and that is something that is enforceable, but it would require the Township Code Enforcement Department to go out and
Is there an
make a
hour on that?
determination.
Am I missed? What section is that?
No, that's 24 hours a day, so.
Again, Commissioners, I think it's
Used to be
important to
like 11
note,
o'clock,
we're not recommending that this is what you're going to pass, if you want to pass your revised ordinance. We tackled this a couple of 3 years ago, and then it never went anywhere. When Commissioner Sanchez brought it up again, just the fact that it says 2018 on the signature page doesn't mean we've just recently drafted this. I think what this is intended is to give you an idea of what there could be, and the motion tonight is to authorize our office and the manager's office to begin producing a revised draft, taking all of this input from the commissioners, tweaking this a little bit more, talking with code, talking with the police department to come up with a revised draft, because we never really had the conversation a couple of years ago. There was a little pushback in certain areas, so we never really had the conversation a couple of years ago. So this is really designed to just sort of start the conversation again with the township staff and with the commissioners, if you want to revise your noise ordinance.
And the way I saw it, Commissioner Gillespie, that, yes, it would apply to, like a loud, rowdy party at a house.
Usually it could be loud and rowdy till about 11.
So that could be, a consideration on the weekends. Yes, Commissioner Zappone.
So what's being proposed here is for Saturday and Sunday to move the hours back to 9 a.m. What about the landscapers that are out there working to earn a living, start at 7 o'clock? So we're going to penalize them? Like, what's up with that?
Yeah, I mean,
Well, I don't think that's fair to them. They're working class people. They're out there trying to provide for their families, and you're going to tell them they have to start at 9 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday?
well, they still.
Contractors and all, half their day is gone by 9 a.m.
Well, they would have a 12-hour, they'd have Monday through Friday at 7 a.m.
But a lot of them work on Saturday as well, so I don't think it'd be fair to those people.
Are we restricting them, or do they just have to apply for a special exception?
Well, it would be a restriction on that. I think the special exception was an idea for like an event.
The special exception, I think, is designed to address Commissioner Gillespie's concern. There's a big party at somebody's house during the.
But I mean, does it need to be limited to that? I mean, can we give
It does
permits
not.
to landscape contractors to, extend their hours?
Certainly.
Some comments down there. Commissioner Schreiber.
Thank you. In the same thing, on Saturdays and Sundays, we have snow blowers on there. I think a lot of people who have to get to work, and it snows the night before, they're going to have to get out before 9 a.m. to use their snow blower. So I know it says emergency somewhere else, but it's not always an emergency. You might just have to get out to work and get your driveway cleared or your sidewalks before you leave for work. So I would not be in favor of making a 9 a.m. for snow blowers.
Right. I mean, from a purely legal standpoint, I would think that if there were a snow emergency declared in the township, which we seem pretty ample, that,
What if we don't declare an emergency? I think we have to keep that from, that isn't always an emergency when people are using their snow blower. It's an emergency to them, but doesn't mean that it's an emergency in the township. It just might be that they got plowed back in or something and the emergency's over and, yeah.
Gotcha. Commissioner DiPuzio.
Thank you, Commissioner Sanchez. We have a lot of block parties in our neighborhood, and they go long. And we have to fill out a
application through the police. Now, do we need to fill out also a secondary application for the noise?
The application would be, I'm guessing, a special events permit?
I'm sorry,
It
say
would be a
again?
special events permit, presumably, that's being filled out?
Correct.
We could incorporate the forms to be a single form.
Okay. Thanks. 2 for 1. That's what we're looking for.
The key is you invite everybody.
Commissioner Myers.
Thank you. I'd like to address Exhibit B, I think at the last page, letter B, back to trash and rubbish removal, and specifically on the weekends. 9 o'clock is too late. I know that you're designing this for commercial, but there are a lot of complexes that have private trash removal, and we really like it at 7 because it gets the trash trucks out of the way and done before the day really begins. And just speaking for commercial, I think especially on a Saturday, they want to have it done early because they don't want the trash trucks there as people that are coming in to use the parking lot, and to, it's not going to affect traffic in the parking lots. So I think there's a reason for that. I think 9 o'clock on a Saturday in that specific use is definitely too late.
I believe Manager Manfredi has a point here.
I just want to remind everyone that it was my understanding when you requested that this go on the agenda, that this ordinance was provided in this packet to do exactly what it is doing. Have discussion, bring these issues up, the various comments, so that we can then take them, put them into a revised draft, as well as any other comments that any commissioner might have, that we can come up with a draft for future and further discussion in the future. So all comments, whether they're, when you take this back and you look at it, if you would just send me an email, we will work with the solicitor's office to compile all of those and incorporate them into another draft for additional discussion later. So I guess my point is, this was, I believe, what you were precisely trying to accomplish.
Exactly what I was trying to accomplish. Commissioner Brodsky.
Let me try and summarize it briefly and to the point. This is basically an interest of balancing the rights of the commercial versus the rights of the residential, and where you reach a fair and reasonable balance between the rights of both, so that you can incorporate everybody's interests and fairly allow commercial operations and corporations and landscapers to exist, as well as taking into consideration the rights of the residents. I think there needs to be a fair balancing act across the board. That's the consideration. I think that's what the solicitor should do in drafting the ordinance, take a look at those balancing interests and see where it goes from there. So I think that summarizing it in that fashion, unless anybody has any other issues, I think considering that, let's let the solicitor take a look at this and revisit the issue when we have a working draft. Just my suggestion.
Commissioner Spiegelman.
Thank you, Commissioner Sanchez. First of all, thank you very much for all of your work on this. Given all the different points and perspectives and specific scenarios that have been brought up, I think this would be sort of a very useful thing for us, just individually or via the township email list or website or all the above, to kind of solicit input from residents, just kind of take the pulse of the people, because all these points are valid, and then there are counterpoints that are just as valid, or that sound just as valid. And I'm a terrible person to ask, because noise just doesn't bother me, but might be a good opportunity to just kind of take the pulse of folks.
I put a poll on your Facebook page while you were talking.
I think you should do that. I think you should. I think you should put a picture of yourself in that poll. Take total credit for it.
And again, just to underscore that, that's a great point, Commissioner Spiegelman, just to underscore that, if we don't move away from, even if we remain intact with 7 a.m. to 9 p.m., 24-hour noise, this would still be a useful exercise to kind of consolidate all the items, make sure we have a one page or everyone's enforcing uniformly, and
that makes good sense.
So
absolutely
leave it at that. Unless there's anything else, I think you have some direction, and
Certainly.
and if anyone, thinks of anything or sees anything, please feel free to send it, to the solicitor, Manager Manfredi, Commissioner Hecker.
So one other brief moment of levity, if you'll allow it.
Sure.
This is item J, and I think it has its roots in English common law, but I like the language. No peddler, hawker, or vendor shall shout or otherwise cry his wares, which disturbs the peace and the quiet of the neighborhood.
That's your current ordinance.
Wow, interesting. Were we officially the United States of America when that was drafted?
Under subsection F, you're also
Yeah,
not allowed
you're
to
dead.
yell, shout, or hoot.
I think we've heard from most everyone, and thank you, everyone. That was exactly what I intended to achieve there. Okay, so next we move on to, oh, sure, yes, I was remiss. We'll take public comment on that item. 3 minutes, please.
Laura Lehman, 1431 Bryant Lane, and just a couple of quick comments. I'm glad you are consolidating that. The issue with St. Michael's, many of you were around. Perhaps some of you were even around when they originally got their zoning approval based on using their brand-new 1,100 square foot building one time a year for the whole church. I think that little "for the whole church" was the catchphrase. Obviously, that has already happened a lot more. It's right in the backyards of many neighbors and was one of the largest bones of contention with building their new facility. And so I hope that in your new regulations, you'll address the issue of a facility that might, for instance, every weekend be available for rental or use in a way that would make noise. And so I hope that your special exceptions would include a very limited amount of time that, a number of times during the year that could happen. And also with notification to the neighbors, as somebody mentioned. The other thing, and I don't know if this fits in the noise ordinance, but if you are, for instance, especially for elderly people, and you're at home at 9 o'clock at night and you're getting a knock on the door, that also disturbs your privacy and your enjoyment of your property. So I don't know if that could fall under this ordinance, that knocking on the door and soliciting that late. I know we did have that discussion under solicitation, but I think very clearly everyone I've spoken to, after dark is not okay. So I hope you'll consider that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay. ACL 4. This is to consider a motion to establish a process and assignment of responsibility for reviewing, revising, and updating the Township Subdivision and Land Development Ordinance. Mr. Manfredi, did you want to describe it? I'm sorry. Was that?
The request for this item on the agenda, and what I think we'll be doing, and I've done other places, is I will put the sponsor's name after the agenda item so everyone knows who sponsored it. For example, the last item was Mr. Sanchez, and in this particular case, it was Mr. Klein. But I think the request was just to do this, for a discussion on how to proceed and assign responsibility for reviewing and revising the subdivision and land development ordinance, so I'll defer to Mr. Klein.
So, when we finalized the zoning ordinance last year, about this time last year, along with that was a list of recommendations for revisions to the subdivision and land development ordinance, which is the natural next step in municipal code updating. When you do a comprehensive plan, you do the zoning ordinance, and then you look at your SALDO, your subdivision and land development ordinance. I think I somewhat recovered from the zoning ordinance, and in talking with Mark and Mike Narkowicz and getting Amy, we'll get Amy involved. I think it's time that we start to look at revising our subdivision land development ordinance, taking into account the recommendations, taking into account the model ordinance that the Montgomery County Planning Commission has put together and has used on several occasions throughout the county for subdivision and land development ordinance revisions. So I'd like to get some direction from the board to go ahead and start doing that, working with staff on putting that together. And on top of it, Mark and I have worked on, mainly Mark, have worked on some zoning revisions that have to be addressed from the zoning ordinance that have come to our attention over the last, I guess, 8 to 9 months. So
do you envision we form what, I know you had the zoning rewrite committee, and then, you know, a lot of that I know fell on you and Mark. I mean, should we work to form a Saldo committee, or, I mean, or is that too premature? I mean, I'd be happy to help you guys in the efforts. I know Commissioner Thompson has some expertise in that field. I'm sure others have, you know, a lifetime of expertise in that. So if that would help.
Yeah, I'm not sure, and once again, I think the direction comes from the entire board, but I'm not sure that this requires a large group of, you know, like we put together for the zoning hearing board, I mean, excuse me, for the zoning ordinance rewrites, because this is going to be more technical in nature. There are a lot of standards that are already, you know, commonly used. The model ordinances that are out there, ordinances that we have from, you know, other experiences will be incorporated into. There's some mandated things that we have to change in our subdivision and land development ordinance that are not up to date. So I think it's much more technical oriented. I mean, myself, I'm going to be relying more on staff and the County Planning Commission, Mike Narkowicz, to put that together. But I think it would be good to have some commissioners with some review status to work with staff on it. So,
Mr. Sanchez?
Yeah, Manager.
May I suggest that, consistent with what the commissioner is suggesting and other commissioners that have expressed an interest in participating in this, that I put together a scope and duty, so to speak, not necessarily a committee, but a composition of what the scope is, timelines. I can have that, if you would like, for the next meeting, which would, again, assign responsibility and build in a process that makes sure that things flow through the manager's office, reviewed by the solicitor, and that all commissioners have this submitted to them in your information center, and we can keep it moving and obviously consult Commissioner Klein in that document.
Sounds great to me. Is that consistent with what?
yeah, I think that's enough to get the ball rolling. I think there's more people that need to be involved as it gets rolling, but yeah.
And that document will
As long as the
include.
board's fine with that.
Oh, sorry.
I'm sorry.
I'm fine with that as long as the board's fine with that. I mean, I'm just looking to I'm trying to look to start the next step. It's time that we start moving on the subdivision and land development ordinance.
I can have a draft together for you for next week.
It'll include goals and a rough timeline of how far out we
Yes.
want to take this.
Yeah, when it would sunset, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Shorter than the zoning ordinance.
So do we need a recommendation of the?
I think if there's a consensus of the majority of the committee to direct me to prepare that for next week's consideration, I think that's all I would need.
Any objection from anyone on that?
No, does anyone in committee object to that? If there's no objections, I'll just proceed, put it on the agenda and provide that to you for next week.
No objections. Okay. We'll take a public comment on that.
Laura Lehman, 1431 Bryant Lane. I can't tell you how distressing some of this is to hear. There certainly is a need to put more measures into that land development ordinance, but if you recall, we recently had one of the largest land development projects with 2 large buildings and over 500 units that escaped going to land development again and again and again, despite land development documents being repeatedly produced at great expense and meetings called that land development review was going to happen, and it never did. And amazingly, the person most in charge of all of that, who was profiting at the time from that, will now be in charge of rewriting our land development rules. Something is wrong with that, okay? That's what has to change. This is not okay, and a desire to keep it as close to the vest with as few people as possible. It's just not okay. That land development that did not happen properly, the rules were somewhat unclear, but mostly they were just violated, in my opinion, okay? But, so the rules do need to be established more directly, but they should not be established by people who already have subverted their use, because they will be rewritten so that subversion can happen again. And if you recall, we got to the end of that process and we had fire engines that couldn't get in and standpipes that may have been in the wrong place for parking, all kinds of things that weren't reviewed, and repeatedly the documents showed, when is this coming to land development? These things need to be discussed in land development. So it's one of the most important things when we have large developments, and increasingly we are having larger and larger developments, okay? You're seeing 200 and 300 unit developments repeatedly coming before the board. So this is distressing to me and should be distressing to many of you, and we need a system of oversight, and we do not want people who have abused this system to be in charge of leading its review. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Okay, with that, any other comments from the public? We need to take comments on general matters of administrative code and land use.
Laura Lehman, 1431 Bryant Lane. As you know, I tried to get information about the firewalls just simply by asking a question and having a simple answer, and I was not afforded that courtesy, which, frankly, anybody who doesn't afford that courtesy shouldn't be in charge of public affairs of any sort. So I did requisition the papers on the firewalls to find out if a letter had gone out. What a shame to have to go, everybody have to jump through all those hoops of right to know letters back and forth and everything else. But that's what I had to do to get an answer. So what I got was the discussion from the meeting, which seemed very definitely to end with a consensus that there was going to be a letter going to the Department of Labor and Industry to see if we could allow our 70-year or more firewall ordinance to continue, and we were given to know that they would probably do that. But then, in those same documents, there was no letter. So it apparently didn't go out. So here I am, unable to get a simple answer. I will ask all of you, all 15 of you, to afford me, please, a simple answer, which you should also understand. And Commissioner President, I'm looking at you, that you should understand whether this went out, why it didn't go out, and I should be afforded some response in that regard. I know better than to ask Mr. Sanchez, who appears to have decided not to answer my questions, or am I wrong? Will you answer that question? Has it gone out? Has it not gone out? And if not, why? I thought so. Okay. So the second thing that I want to ask is I have here 55 docket numbers from the multiple pages of lawsuits from the Colonnade. This is just one segment of them. And these 55 docket numbers seem to be perhaps the same that have hopped around from one courtroom to another. They were moved to Gadzicki's courtroom, and then they were moved to Smith's courtroom, then they were moved to Saltz's courtroom. Then apparently it looks like they are in Mr. Richard Welsh's courtroom and to be heard Friday morning. I would like to understand why these are moving around. I'd like to understand how I can get notified that they're going to be Friday morning. And I would like to understand how this is happening in this particular township that residents who are allowed to be at these meetings can't find out these court dates, can't find out when the court dates are.
Your time's expired, thank you. I recommend you take that issue up with the prothonotary of the Court of Common Pleas of Montgomery County. That's not a township issue that's moving around. Thank you.
Take it up with them to find out when and how the court cases are reviewed? Okay, so my township knows, and that the fact that they will not accommodate that is sinful. Okay.
Thank you for your comments. Any other public comments? Can we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
I'm sorry.
I just wanted to go on the record. My apologies for being late to the meeting. And I just wanted the record to show that I was in attendance. I just missed roll call.
Thank you for that. Commissioner
And just before you close, I do endorse Commissioner Klein's idea that the land development ordinance should be revised and updated. I think we've seen various overlaps in different areas of our code that should be under land development, and I think it's natural to revise it. So I think it's a good idea.
Thank you, Commissioner Bowman. All those in favor of adjourning?
So.
Thank you. We're adjourned.
Good evening, everyone. I want to call the Public Safety Committee for April 4th, 2018 to order. And can I have a roll call, please? Here.
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 Here. Here.
Thank you very much. And now a motion to approve the minutes of the February 28th, 2018 Public Safety Committee meeting, and I so move.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any corrections or additions? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
And the minutes are approved. All right, we're going to start with some presentations or some informational bits for this evening. And first, I'd like to call on our Deputy Chief, Kelly Warner.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good evening, Commissioners and Mr. Manfredi. I did want to mention something that I'm very proud of. Sergeant Roger Gillespie, as you know, coordinates our Community Policing Division. He applied for 2 grants totaling almost just over $9,000, specifically to help offset costs for our DARE program. He made these requests for Citizens and Police Together, or CAPT, because that is who pays for us police officers to go into the schools and present the DARE program, or Drug Abuse Resistance Education program. So the costs that he was able to get were defray the costs for workbooks and the T-shirts, which are a big hit for the kids. And every DARE day, their students wear the DARE T-shirt when the officer comes in. Of course, this continues to support our presence in the schools, in the elementary schools, all 7 of them, and also parochial and private schools in the township. In addition, he said, you know, I'm going to take another bite of the apple, and he applied for yet another grant on behalf of CAPT for the 24-hour relay challenge, which, as you know, is a 24 hours of drug-free, violence-free fun time for the community and for students. So I had to publicly commend Roger for looking for that grant opportunity, which was granted through Family Services of Montgomery County. So I was very excited about that. And of course, just as a reminder, the DARE program is funded by CAPT and does not cost the township any tax dollars. So we're grateful for that. That's my report, Commissioner. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Does anybody have any questions? Deputy Chief? Okay, I know you'll be back on a later agenda item. I want to acknowledge our fire marshals here tonight, and then also call on second alarmers, Ken Davidson and Rich Garrett, who have a report for us this evening.
Good evening, Commissioners. Thank you. Commissioner Schreiber had asked if we could provide an update for you guys on the opioid crisis and some of the EMS response. I know at various meetings in the past we provided some statistics. We have in the past informed you it's a little bit difficult with the reporting software that we use to sometimes isolate things, so we kind of give our best guess at numbers and the most obvious of cases. We're fortunate to have a good working relationship with the police department and between the two forces to be able to corroborate data and pull things together. So looking at the first quarter of 2018, so far it looks like between police and EMS we've responded to 7 obvious opioid overdoses. Unfortunately, 2 of those resulted in the patient expiring at the scene. There were 3 cases where the police department delivered Narcan and no additional Narcan needed to be delivered by EMS. There were 2 cases when the EMS unit was the first to deliver Narcan and no additional Narcan was required. And in this quarter, there were no cases where both agencies had to give it. In the past, we've had some instances where both the police and EMS have had to give EMS. In this case, there was none. There were 2 of the cases where Narcan did not need to be given, was not indicated or required. And again, in most cases, the patients were successfully transported to the hospital. So we're certainly not out of the crisis yet. Nothing seems to be a significant dip or change from the past years and past quarters. We continue to respond to the calls. We continue to resuscitate the patients. We have voiced in the past our concern that with some of the regulations that were out there, we felt there wasn't enough weight put on trying to compel patients for further treatment. So we were seeing the situation where EMS and the police would respond. They would treat the patient would then become conscious and alert and would refuse further treatment. And unfortunately, our hands were kind of tied with no mechanism to compel them to seek further care. There are a couple pieces of legislation that are moving through the process, House Bill 1501 and Senate Bill 810, that provide some amendments to some of the immunity regulations and have set a time frame on that. So we would encourage everybody, certainly the commissioners and the residents, to contact their state representatives and senators for support on that. Unfortunately, we feel that it's a step in the right direction, but the time frame that they have set on that is for 30 days to get people to seek treatment. And from our standpoint, from the front line of the war, we really feel that we need something that will compel people to seek immediate treatment. We talk a lot, you hear the catchphrase of a warm handoff and wanting to get the warm handoff to these centers. We have a lot of centers that come in and approach us. We have a new agency that came in to give us some information. We're going to share that with the police department. And they want us to try and refer patients to them and facilitate this warm handoff. But there's really no mechanism for us to do that 20 or 30 days down the road. That has to occur at the time of the overdose and when we're there. And right now, there's really nothing behind that with any traction. So we would certainly ask that you keep an eye on those pieces of legislation and please work with the state representatives to support that. I'm happy to take any specific questions that you have, but that's the basic statistics that we have for you.
Thank you. I have a couple questions, and I'm sure other people do too. Excuse me. So do you, when the saves are not successful, do you get any information if it's because of like fentanyl or other things in there, or does that kind of, it's past you at that point, so you don't really...
That's going to be out of my wheelhouse. I'd probably have to refer there to the police department and what goes on as far as the investigation or even the coroner's office. But unfortunately, the feedback that we get concludes with our contact.
And during your contact period, if they don't want help at that point, do you have literature and things of that sort to give them about where they could get that, so-called warm handoff if, 5 minutes later they'd think, oh, I should have done that?
There's been a couple of permeations of it. There is an information card that the county has that we can provide. It's unfortunately very Narcan-centric, so it provides a lot of information about naloxone and the medication. It does have some information to contact either the county mental health, or there is some information in there. They had talked about a pilot program from the state. It hasn't come to fruition, where they wanted to make that trackable. So there was an intent from one of the companies so that if we were to give out that information and then somebody sought care, they would know that it came as a result of us handing it out. And I think that it had some merit to it, so we would know if it was successful or not. Unfortunately, we haven't heard much more about that. We did offer to participate in the pilot, and then we haven't heard back from the state. So we do have some. It's very difficult for us because a lot of the companies, we get companies to stop in off the street and give us information to give out. We have no way of vetting them. We have no way of knowing how reputable an organization they are. So the best is to point people towards either county mental health or the county programs, and can give them that information. But we try not to, if we don't know the specifics of a program, we don't want to start advertising or handing out literature from something that we're not familiar with.
I was even thinking about our APAIR program. Do they get the Abington Police brochure? So the police are there at the same time, is that right?
Yes, we are. And so what we've tried to do is with the other county partnerships is to give them the heads up. If you recall the conversations we've had, we have a time limitation, not necessarily with APAIR, but if they're going to the hospital, we're trying to get that warm handoff started right away. So someone is there to accept them and to intervene. And we've been working very...
We're talking about people who won't accept that to go into the, you said there's a few that won't go, right?
There are. Interestingly, across the coverage area that we serve, it's a challenge we've run into. And anecdotally, looking at the calls in Abington, we haven't seen them run into it as much in Abington. And I was talking to Deputy Chief Warren earlier. I have no idea why we're more successful in Abington in getting people to go, but we are.
Really?
But there are occasionally...
Really? It's Abington Police.
There are occasionally cases where the person doesn't want to go. I mean, by the time that they have fully refused and satisfied the needs of that, they've spoken to us, they've spoken usually to a medical command physician on the phone. Everybody's certainly encouraging them. Again, if, I'm sure if the police have the information to give to them and they want it, the patients who are refusing further care really don't seem to have much interest in hearing. They kind of want us out of their hair as quickly as possible.
Other questions?
Madam Chair, if I could, we do receive information if there is an overdose death, about if there's additional or whatever the toxins are in that person's body. We do get a report of that afterwards.
So you know what the reason is?
Yes.
To the police part?
Yes.
Thank you for clearing that up.
Are there any statistics that track if we see the same person treated multiple times with Narcan?
There's nothing specific. I mean, if we look at the list and we can see the same address come up sometimes. There's nothing that specifically flags that or that we would see that on what we track. Again, we're looking at the police and county police reports. If you have the same address, we could then go back in and look and see if it's the same name. Sometimes you have the same address with multiple names there. Absolutely, we have responded in Abington and in all of the coverage area that we serve to the same location for the same person multiple times. I can tell you that it does happen. We've had instances where we've responded to the same location multiple times in a 12-hour period for overdoses. So it does happen. We don't pull that specifically as a statistic, but it certainly occurs.
Ken, could I jump in?
Sure.
Commissioner, absolutely, we do know that. And generally, if we get a call back again at one spot, that's when we start to involve our hub program to try to get somebody out there to do some outreach. And to your point, Commissioner, about getting APAIR, getting them to want to have help in another way. So we do try to monitor that, stay on top of that.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Commissioner Klein?
Have you had any instances where you've treated either your own EMS people or police officers from breathing in any of the fentanyl or carfentanil?
We have not. We have certainly seen some of the reports of it in other places. There's certainly a concern for it. There's a lot of good information that's been put out. To be quite frank, a lot of the cases that we've seen that were reported, it seems like there was definitely a concern by it, and we don't doubt that the people who had the potential exposure felt symptoms. But if you actually look at some of the symptoms that they exposed and that they report feeling after those exposures, they're not actually consistent with opioid overdose. So we've had a couple cases in the state where it was reported that officers or first responders believed that they came in contact with a substance. They then became tachycardic, and they had increased heart rate and anxiety and other things that are almost sort of counter to opioid exposure. So prophylactically they were treated for that, they were taken in and they were evaluated, but we haven't seen a whole lot of cases where there's been a significant clinical presentation of opioid overdose after the potential exposure. We did do a training program for the fire department a couple months ago and provide them with some additional information on it. Certainly, the nitrile gloves that we wear, the N95 masks that the responders have are appropriate. I think a lot of the concerns there are, again, if a law enforcement agency is going into a production area or a lab or a distribution area where there's high quantities of the material. Certainly, even before the concerns with fentanyl, any time that you're exposed to any kind of a substance or a powder or something, it gives reason for concern. But we haven't had to treat any of our patients or of our providers. We haven't had to treat any local law enforcement, and we have kind of kept an eye on the reports locally, and we haven't seen anything that gives us a huge amount of concern. The problem, though, is that every week they come out with something different, more potent and stronger. So,
right. Thank you.
Commissioner DePlacido.
Thank you, Commissioner Shriver. Just quick comment, actually. Another stat that I think I'd like to see is how many have taken us up on the APAIR project so far.
So far, none yet.
Okay.
Still new.
Exactly.
Commissioner Thompson.
Do we know how many of these cases occur in public settings versus in private settings? Is there a ratio? Is it 50-50? Is it?
We can get to that number. Commissioner, I don't know that offhand. I do think we have found it's more happening in the home.
Mm-hmm.
Off the top of my head, we've had some pretty egregious places where it's happened, sadly, but mostly in the home, I believe.
Okay.
Any other questions? Thank you for
Thank
your
you.
report. I really appreciate it. Thank you for coming in tonight. Okay, moving ahead, we have no unfinished business, so we're going right to new business. And PS1 is to consider a motion to promote Sergeant Kevin McGee to the rank of probationary lieutenant effective April 16th, 2018, provided he successfully completes the remaining portions of the promotional process, and I so move.
Second.
I guess if we're considering it, we're not moving it yet, but do you have any comments?
This is just, as you recall, Chief Livingood setting up our succession planning, promoting Sergeant McGee to the rank of lieutenant is just one other step for this year.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from commissioners? Since I already made it as a motion and it was moved and seconded, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. PS2 is to consider a motion to amend FY 218 budget to reallocate appropriations from line items 5257517 body camera 2016 in the amount of $8,621.34. Line item 5257520 police vehicle digital system $757.29. 5257523 body cameras $10,000. 5257525 in-car video replacement $17,812.06. 5257526 police vehicle digital system $15,000. 5257527 body cameras $10,000. 5257531 in-car video replacement $30,000 to budget line 0704-525-7533 for a specific purpose of a multi-year body camera purchase in the total amount of $112,190.69. And we are considering this motion, and would you like to speak about that, please?
Just to say, Madam Chair, that technology has changed and jumped ahead of our capital spending, and where we were hoping to improve some of our in-car camera systems, we were unable to do so because they were not making that product any longer. So I have to point out Lieutenant Chris Porter, who's the Administrative Division Commander, who looked at our budget in coordination with the Finance Director and said, can we put these all together so we can put it towards what's happening now in technology and purchase something that's going to be helpful, more helpful for our officers and for the residents to have that. So that's what we're doing, consolidating these funds into the one.
So do any of the items that we are not funding right now, are they going to be put into next year's budget?
Well, we aren't going to fund those things because we're pushing, all of this was, it's odd that they were titled in different categories. They should have been just in one category, and that's where I've got to give kudos to Chris. But he looked at that and said, this doesn't make sense. This was for that. One year we did it this, one year we called it that. Let's put it into one right now as we move forward.
Okay, so the digital systems aren't something separate from the body cameras?
No, I'm not quite sure where that one came up with, but
Okay.
digital systems for us will be the body cameras.
Okay, thank you. Yes, Commissioner Rothman.
Are we adding any more money, or is this just a reallocation?
Well, currently, I believe the capital improvements from last year for this budget year, that was done. We will probably be looking for additional capital monies coming in the future, but that's it for this, yeah.
Okay, but this is,
Yes.
for next year, we'll be looking at some more?
Yes.
Okay, that's what I thought. I just wanted.
Sorry.
Commissioner Rothman, to be clear, the way the budget was laid out, every one of these line items was very specific. So when I was requested to approve this, I said, given every item is specific to it, we need to reallocate, reapportion that, so that it's clear that all of these dollars are going to one new line item. So it's a transactional within the budget, but it's because of how the budget was approved. So
Thanks.
no additional dollars.
That's what I thought. I just wanted to confirm. Thanks.
I'm still a little confused with the, so are we not ever replacing the cameras in the police cars, or?
Well, that's not off the table, Commissioner. What we've run into is the extreme cost of having both. And it's been, we have not made the final decision as to whether that's a done deal or not. We have staff that are investigating, in particular, soon-to-be Lieutenant McGee, who's investigating a couple different companies with their products to see what's going to be best for us and going to be the most cost-effective for us.
Are there integrated solutions? I mean, can like a NVR take on a body camera and a car
Yes,
camera? Okay.
yes, and that's the challenge that we're in, because we really like one product, but we have another product to look at that will do both. So do you do one or the other? And it's a challenge and quite a discussion that we're having among the command staff, and certainly would address with the commissioners and the manager. It's been a difficult decision to try to make. So right now we're in the fact gathering, but we know we had to put this money into one spot.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And has there been any pilot programs in the township yet with body cameras?
We have. We've had actually cameras before. A couple years ago, we tested various different body cameras, but much like the phone you just bought, there's a new version tomorrow. Mm-hmm. So we're trying to keep up, and we did have a bit of a hiatus because we didn't have the funding. Now we're gaining some footing in the funding. We're like, we're about ready to purchase this, and with our mobile video cameras failing, we need to do something, and we're moving. This is top priority, I know, for Chief Malloy.
My question is more procedural in nature. I mean, I commend the department for what you're trying to do. I think this is a step in the right direction.
Thank you.
But we are amending our budget for this year. I honestly don't know. Do we need some resolution or ordinance to amend the budget, or can we just do this as an agenda item?
It's a simple motion to create a line item for the body cameras and to reallocate the dollars that were already budgeted. So no, it wouldn't be an amendment or modification. It's really not even a supplemental appropriation. You're just reallocating it from one line item, creating another line item. So there's no increase whatsoever over the budget. It's just monies going from one place to another.
Right.
So it's by simple motion is my point, is
Yeah,
yes.
and there won't be anything in writing other than this agenda item.
That is it. The only, what you could see is, and what I can ask Director Barron to do, is to literally recreate the page that shows the difference.
I don't need to see it. I just need to be assured that this is all we need to do.
Correct.
Okay.
It will
Thank
be
you.
done. And the reason it's laid out this way, so that you can see every line item that it's coming from as to where it's going to.
Okay. Thank you.
I don't know if we asked this, and I guess this would be to you. So is this a body camera for each person, or, I see your head shaking. So,
Yes.
okay. So every person on the force would have it?
Every officer, yes.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions? Commissioner Luther and then Bob.
Question, is that total amount of 112,000, that would be encompass a body camera for every officer? Or close to it?
Good evening, Commissioners. The 112,000 that you see there, that would get our foot in the door for whatever program we want to proceed with in the future. Even some of the programs that we're looking at currently, that would not be enough to cover the entire program through a multi-year contract, which most of the vendors require. And depending on which direction we go, as Commissioner Thompson had mentioned, integrated car cameras and body cameras, that would have a direct impact on the budget, the monetary amount there in that budget. That being said, certainly at least one of the vendors that we're looking at, who's highly recommended, that would be enough to cover us for a couple years at least, until we figure out moving forward later on down the road for a discussion later with the board and the township manager on how we're going to fund the project forward. But we are trying to get a camera for every officer, implement it all at one time, and have enough storage, which quite frankly, that is the challenge, the cost of the data storage, because it's not stored in-house and local. And try to encompass all of that so that we could do this all at once and implement it in a proper way that it's best for both the citizens and the officers themselves.
Okay, thank you.
When you say a camera for every officer, are we talking literally one camera assigned to each officer,
We're
or are
talking
we
one
just
camera for every officer?
So they're not exchanging at shift change?
No, so there's a lot of difficulties that we've come to find out over the years, and recently, as the past couple of years, with other departments surrounding us, what happens when people exchange body cameras and pass them off from shift to shift. And logistically, that's just not prudent for our data storage and our evidentiary procedures. And to maintain the proper chain of custody for evidence purposes, we feel it's best that we enable each officer to have a camera for themselves. And if I just talk about the one program that we're looking at right now, we're really concerned about the technology and how it rolls over every year. And one of the vendors that we're looking at currently, they replace that product every 2.5 years, which is quite beneficial in today's world. But again, everything comes with a price, so we're just trying to get the funding in place so when it is time to bring it back before the board to enter into some type of contract or whatever it may be, that we're able to do that with less hurdles to jump at that time.
Understood.
Commissioner Klein, did you have a
I did. I know one of the conversations we had was a couple years ago about body cameras was the concerns about the, actually it wasn't here, I think it was when at one of the township commissioner conferences I've attended, they talked about the issues with the right to knows and how the information or how the video is cataloged and also what's its accessibility to the public. I know there's been a bunch of changes in the state legislature. Have we reviewed those and we're comfortable moving forward? I know that was one of the apprehensions of moving forward with the body camera program until that got situated from state government.
Yes, Commissioner, we feel that the state has made those decisions and it's allowed us, it's opened the door for us, because beforehand we felt that our hands were tied. We really couldn't logistically have our folks with body cameras as the way the wiretap law was, but the amendments have made that possible for us.
Thank you.
Manager Manfredi?
Deputy Chief, if you would just expand a little further on the multi-year purchase part of this so that the commissioners understand that this isn't, while this is a one-time for this year, it is a multi-year purchase, and you might want to just expand upon that.
Sure, I'm going to defer to Lieutenant Porter on that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So moving all this money and having it all into the same line item makes it a little bit easier for our finance department to manage. Moving forward, depending on what type of contract we engage in, we've been putting money in capital the last several years. That money that we've been putting away, we would expect in the future to continue, or hopefully have those same monies to put in that same line item moving forward, so that we could address that purchase program that involves whether it's a 5-year or 3-year or 7-year program, that we could continuously have something budgeted in our capital budget for that to maintain that project moving forward. Like I said, the one vendor, they've offered us a 5-year contract, a number on a 5-year contract, and that would entail a percentage of this money for the first 3 years, and about the last 2 years we'd be playing a little bit of catch up, and we'd be addressing that as we move on. And speaking with our finance director, I think we have that. I think we have that addressed and have that covered when we come to that point, where we'll have a pretty good handle on things by then.
Does the price go down if we do more years?
Not necessarily. Prices never seem to go down, it seems like. What we do save on is, because we're a large entity, and what they normally deal with in some departments, we've actually bargained a considerable discount as we're standing now with one of the vendors, and Sergeant McGee is actually working with another vendor right now to see where they come in and what their technological upgrades have been in the last year, because we just want to make sure we have everything, we understand everything comprehensively before we make a presentation to the board and move forward with anything. But as far as discounts, where we're at now, we have the price point is about as good as we found it to this point. I don't anticipate much more of a discount whether we buy more or extend into a longer contract with them.
Commissioner Luker?
Just a quick question. Could you give us the difference between the cost of a video digital system versus a body camera for an officer?
We're working on that right now. And believe it or not, the cameras themselves are not very expensive. Some of them are in the vicinity of $300 a camera, maybe $400 a camera.
So they're cheaper than a vehicle?
A vehicle camera system, depending on the vendor there, some of the numbers that we've received to outfit all of our patrol cars right now would be somewhere in the vicinity of $500,000 if we wanted to replace that system right now, standing today, which is a considerable amount. And to that point, Commissioner Luker, if I may, one of the things looking into the body cameras that both our officers were concerned about was what Commissioner Klein mentioned: has the legislation caught up? And it has. And the second aspect of this is what really captures the most to protect both our citizens and the police officers. And sure, we stop vehicles out on the roadway, but most of our interactions are person to person. And that's where everything seems to be leading. Now, as to Commissioner Thompson's point, there is an integrated system out there, and it's very, very comprehensive. And they're actually going to demonstrate some of that new technology for us next week. It hasn't been released to anybody else in the world, but they're going to have a demonstration here, I believe next Friday. Sergeant McGee's setting that up. And it's some really incredible technology, and I'd invite you to, if you're interested in that, and we give the dates to you, to please come out and ask questions of these individuals, because we're certainly asking a lot of questions, and we'd like everybody else to be informed as much as us.
Thank you. Any other questions? Staff or audience? Any questions or comments?
Laura Lehman, 1431 Bryant Lane. So the question I had was just when you have the body camera on, then I assume the person that you're talking to doesn't know. So if I'm standing on my porch talking to an officer, I wouldn't know that I was being videoed and recorded?
Just in our current policy that we have right now with our in-car cameras, we have to advise the person that they are being audio and visually recorded. So we would do the same.
But with the new ones, you would also
Sure.
do the same? Okay, and then also same thing if you're going into somebody's home and so are you careful about that? And I should address this to you, I know. Are you careful about that in terms of, videotaping whatever valuables somebody may have? You know, my fancy china.
Well, I haven't been invited to your home, but I'll take note of it if I am.
Bring your camera.
I will. Clearly, I can't say that we're panning the system, that we're looking at your home. I can't say that. But if we're invited into your home to help you with an issue or concern, and the camera is on, it's there for you and for the officer.
Okay, all right, thank you.
As a point of clarification, the cameras, they're not concealed when they're body cameras, right? They're pretty visible on the uniform.
They're extremely visible,
Yeah.
every model out there. At least the models that we're considering, they're very visible.
But it does sound good that you're advising people that they're on, because I guess some people might consider that they're off and they're just there for an emergency.
I mean, and to be fair, excuse me, Commissioner, to be fair, there may be emergent situations where that's going to be impossible, but.
But if you were invited to the home.
Yes,
Yes.
which I'm waiting for the invitation. Yeah.
Thank you. So, any other questions, comments? We were considering a motion, so we will make that into a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
PS3 is to consider a motion to adopt ordinance number 2153, amending Chapter 156, Vehicles and Traffic, Article 3, Parking Regulations, Section 25, parking prohibited at all times, no parking between signs, no parking here to corner, parking prohibited except certain hours, and Section 28, special parking zones that will establish the following. It will establish, it says that twice. Will establish the following. No parking here to corner on the southbound side of Roberts Avenue, 30 feet north of the stop sign at Ardsley Avenue. No parking on the south side of Moreland Road from Melmar Road west to the end of the shoulder. No parking between signs 5 feet north of the driveway of 781 Jackson Avenue and 2 feet south of the driveway at 801 Jackson Avenue. Handicapped parking in front of 1753 Fairview Avenue and repealing handicap parking in front of 2422 Avondale Avenue. And I so move.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any questions or comments? Staff, audience? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. That ends our formal agenda, and I'll call for public comment on matters that have to do with public safety.
Laura Lehman, 1431 Bryant Lane. The issue with the court cases is something that, as a public safety director, Commissioner Schreiber, you should actually be interested in this as well. Chief Kelly said one time, if there's no penalty or punishment for crimes or whatever are going on, they're going to continue. And these 55 dockets that I mentioned are all public safety items and crucial items for the township to know. And I believe that the township commissioners all, and especially the public safety director and the code director, should be getting a report from the legal division as to the status of these kinds of follow-ups to what we have going. Without having that, we have a large segment of public safety that can be failing because so far the court cases have not produced what they need to produce, which is an end to the kind of behavior that we have. The fact that these cases are even still going on is almost bizarre. So the other thing I want to mention is that when we have a commissioner who purposely keeps residents off of their list, when you use that list to distribute important emergency township information and other news that's important, that's a public safety issue. If I'm, for instance, prohibited from being on my commissioner's list because he doesn't like things that I said, and you are putting out emergency information in storms and I'm not getting it, that's a public safety issue. And that needs to be discussed. So the kind of behaviors that are going on are absolutely outrageous. And you do have a commissioner who I believe you probably all know, possibly the grand jury has asked that commissioner to step down, and yet he's still there and in charge. So it looks like, from your expression, like you don't know that. So I'll send you the information.
She doesn't know it because you're making it up.
Well, I'm not making up.
There's no such thing. It's not even anywhere close to being true. And you get up here and you throw out these baseless allegations, and they're all too polite to tell you that you don't know what you're talking about, but you don't know what you're talking
about. Well, I have reason to believe that it might be true.
Reason to make it up in your own mind. It doesn't exist.
Well, I'll share the information that I have that gives me reason to believe that it might be true. I certainly do know the specific details of what the grand jury investigation was about.
How do you know that?
And it certainly
Excuse me,
should
how do you
be
know
true.
the details of the grand jury proceeding? It's a secret.
I said, I know the details of what the grand jury investigation was about because I have close to 5,000 documents that I've read, Commissioner Sanchez, and if you've read them too.
So you know what the grand jury was stating?
That's not what I said. I said I have reason
Well,
to
you made a
believe.
comment that you knew that they had asked someone to step down.
Yes, I have reason to believe that may be the case.
You have reason to believe, or you have specific knowledge?
I will send it to you, okay? I will send it to you, what gives me reason to believe. And it is part of the public record, and it is part of these court cases that you all should be getting a summary of. And if you had a summary of that court case, Mr. Sanchez, you would also have that. It's the same information that I have. Whether it's true or not, I don't know, but certainly somebody believes that it's true, and that should be of great concern to learn that information. Thank you.
I don't even know what to say, except for it's troubling that somebody would say, I don't know if it's true or not, and then get up at a microphone and say it. That concludes our agenda this evening. Thank you.
Madam Chairman, may I ask a question?
Yes.
With what the speaker was just talking about, the beginning part, and actually, Mr. Solicitor, this might be for you. If as many commissioners do, send out newsletters, emergency information on our own email, private email, and many of us pay to use a system, a constant contact, that kind of thing, so that the emails are more attractive. And if we're doing that, can we decide who is or isn't on our list?
The short answer is yes. We'll get you a more specific answer about what you can do. But as the key, Commissioner Myers, is that it's on your private email. There are no tax dollars involved. And you may be using some sort of service of cost that you're bearing. So yes, you can decide who receives this information and who does not.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. And that concludes our agenda and our meeting for this evening.
It is my pleasure to call to order the Tuesday, April 4th, 2018 meeting of the Abington Township Public Affairs Committee. Committee. Great start. Can we start with a roll call, please?
Commissioner Spiegelman?
Here.
Here.
Schreiber? Here. Duplessis?
Here.
Here.
As we have, as it's late and we have a rather robust agenda, we're going to be very, very efficient tonight. Let's start with the approval of the minutes. This is a motion to approve the minutes of the February 28th, 2018 Public Affairs Committee meeting, and I so move.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any corrections, comments? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Minutes are passed. We have two exciting presentations tonight from two great members of the Public Affairs family. We're going to start with a library board presentation from the president of the Board of Trustees of the Abington Township Public Library, Mr. Tom Tyler.
Thank you, Chairman Spiegelman. Tom Tyler for the Library Board. I won't subscribe to this being an exciting presentation, but that was nice of you to propose that. I'm very pleased to be here with Nancy Marshall, our Library Director. I have to admit to having been an irregular visitor to public affairs meetings, nowhere near like my predecessor as Library Board, Judge Garrett Page, who was a regular and faithful attendee to the public affairs. And part of my reason for being here tonight is to begin that process again. And I know Mr. Spiegelman has been in touch with us to try to set that up on a regular, not every meeting, but maybe every quarter or a few times a year. So I look forward to moving forward on that with Mr. Spiegelman's office. The second principal issue I just wanted to touch on is we have been have had a vacancy on the board since November, and I understand that there's a new process in place or being contemplated in the township for filling I guess citizen boards, of which the library is one. Citizen boards in the township, a new process for filling vacancies, and we just encourage the commissioners in the township to move on that because we're without a board, a full board complement, and so we look forward to to resolving that issue. All right, thank you very much.
Now that was a quick presentation. Thank you very much, Mr. Tyler. All right. Moving right along. It is April. April is Earth Month. Not just Earth Day, but Earth Month. And we have our annual presentation from the awesome Environmental Advisory Council. And with us, as always, Jen Sherwood.
Thank you, John. Sorry, mine won't be quite as brief as the libraries.
Yours has colorful presentations.
But we have great pictures. So we're here once a year at the Public Affairs meeting to just remind everyone that the EAC is available to support the township and residents, like if you have residents who have questions. And here we go. So we're a 7-member volunteer panel appointed by the board, and we help protect the environment here in Abington. And we have goals. We're working on sustainability, water issues, open space, and of course always educating the public on these issues. So for sustainability, in 2016, we worked with a tool called Star Communities to come up with a sustainability plan and a roadmap for becoming more sustainable in the future. And 2 of those related initiatives were a Shop Local campaign and our Go Green Rewards card. So with the Star Communities assessment, we looked at social, economic, and environmental attributes of our township. We were able to create a plan which shows our strengths and weaknesses, and then now we're in the process of working on improving those weaknesses. So we're going to be working on this for about 3 years, and then we'll do a reevaluation. And Kaki Evans is our lead on the sustainability program, and right now it's funded by EAC fundraisers. And Penn State is a Star Communities affiliate, and we currently have an intern from Penn State who's helping us on some of these projects. So our evaluation showed us that we're great in education, arts, and community, great in health and safety, but some of the areas that we need to work on are natural systems, which is what the EAC works on, and equity and empowerment. So moving ahead, we're going to be working with those Penn State resources and working on several of these issues. And one of those is the Shop Local initiative. The other one is Go Green Rewards Card, which involves rewarding people for taking green actions and getting discounts at local businesses. So we've been working with some of the business associations on this. Okay, for water quality, we've been working on the MS4 permitting, where we support educating the public, and we provide low-cost rain barrels as a way to educate people about stormwater issues. And we also partner with many of the other environmental groups working on stormwater projects, and we do water quality monitoring. So we help with those MS4 permit requirements. This is a new rain barrel that is installed outside the township building. Of course, right now it's put away for the winter, but it'll be going back out soon. So we appreciate your support in selecting the design for that last year. So the Rain Barrel the Town program is our volunteer program that builds rain barrels to help people obtain discounted rain barrels that makes it affordable for people. And of course, we appreciate the township support on this, and we have lots of volunteers. So if you know any groups looking for projects, we're always looking for help. And we have some very young helpers who love using the power tools. And this is a Girl Scout who is very enthusiastic about drilling holes in rain barrels. So we're up to 1.5 million gallons retained each year from our rain barrels, and still growing. Here's our map, which gets a little more populated each year, of people who have purchased rain barrels, or either through us or through other commercial outlets. And it sort of corresponds to density of housing, but it's a great way to show that we are making a difference with our stormwater control. So we also partner with other organizations like the engineering department, parks, and the TTF watershed on their projects. And TTF watershed, of course, is leading some really great projects for retaining stormwater. So we've been supporting them on that. And our volunteers also help with the water quality monitoring. We're out there every month making observations. And for protecting open space, we're continuing our cleanups, sprucing up neighborhood parks and places like the Keswick Avenue underpass. So we had about 20 events last year. This year, we're going to be doing about the same. So here's some events that are coming up. Starting this weekend, we have Ardsley Wildlife Sanctuary, which always can use some help. And then we have a whole bunch of others. So if you have an area in your ward that needs a little help, let us know. We'll get our volunteers out and help you clean it up. All these events are listed on our Facebook page and on our website for more information. Okay, and finally, we're continuing our educational efforts through our workshops. We have lots of events coming up. These are all posted. We love working with partners. So we have Briarbush, the Shade Tree Commission, the library. So we have a lot of rain barrel workshops coming up. And so encourage your constituents to come out to these events. There's always something fun and always something to learn. Another one of our partners is the Wyncote Audubon Society. We're in Abington, Audubon Bird Town, and we do bird walks once a month, sometimes twice a month during the summer along the Pennypack Trail. So those are fun events too. And once a year we give out our Montgomery Award. Last year's recipient was Linda Ritter, who does the gardens at the Abington Hospital. And we're looking for new nominees, so if you know anybody in your ward that you would like to nominate, we accept nominations all year long, but we make our decision in May. So for this year, the deadline is April 30th. So get your nominations in, and we'll have another award this year. And then in recognition of our volunteer efforts in 2017, the EAC received the Montgomery County Planning Advocate Award, and that was mostly for our lead role in the Star Communities Sustainability Plan. And so we received the award back in November, and we would like to present the award to the board. So if you...
Come down. Here, I'll give... Wow. You get the award. We get the award. It's a planning. Well, this is very well deserved. A planning? Very well deserved.
So we appreciate working with the township, appreciate the great support that we have. And we'll continue carrying on with our cleanups and our rain barrel work. And we just ask if you'd like to help environmental efforts, just promote our events and be a partner, encourage your constituents to volunteer with us. We've always got a wealth of knowledge to share and are willing to partner with lots of groups. So anyway, join us, and happy Earth Month, happy Earth Day. We appreciate your support. Thank you.
Jen, thank you. Thank you so much. I mean, I'm not allowed to go on all night. I could go on all night about the extraordinary work you do. I just want to say, all of, this will be brief, I promise. The fact that everything you do, all of your events are so easy to find on Facebook now. You guys, your communication is excellent. And it just makes it so much easier for us to share those events with everybody. So thank you. That's an upgrade I've definitely noticed. And just congratulations on your well-deserved award, and thank you for everything you do for all of us.
Thank you. It's a team effort. Thanks.
All right. And now, very efficiently moving on to our formal agenda. We have no unfinished business. So we'll move on to the new business, starting with item. Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry about that. Sidebar. Starting with item PA1. This is a motion to request approval to submit a grant application to the Delaware Valley Regional Planning Commission for a feasibility study for a new sidewalk project at Old Welsh Road in the Willow Grove section of the township, and I so move.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Director Struther, yes, tell us about this.
Yes, sir. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, and commissioners. In 2015, the Board of Commissioners approved the use of CDBG funds to construct a sidewalk for a limited section of Old Welsh Road, specifically the 2700 block of Old Welsh Road. After the approval of that action, my department moved forward to engineer the drawings and prepare to go out to bids. During the preparation to go out to bids, we did receive some comments from the residents in that limited block. It's only 4 residents. We received mixed emotions from the residents, so we put the project on hold. But we did complete the drawings, we did secure the permits from PennDOT, and we had planned to move forward at a later date. Moving forward in 2017, December of 2017, the Willow Grove Mall conducted a public meeting, and at that public meeting, there was a conversation concerning improvements that the Willow Grove Mall would like to move forward on, and there was public comments that came back for their presentation to make improvements with traffic and pedestrian access way. With those public comments and rejoining the previous approved board action in 2015, we're looking at expanding the scope. We're still going to specifically do the limited area within the upcoming budget year, but there is a grant opportunity to do a feasibility study to extend the sidewalk all the way out to Fitzwatertown Road. So the motion that's in front of you to consider is giving authorization for township staff and the township manager and his designee to submit an application to the Delaware Valley Regional Planning Commission.
All right, thank you very much, Director Struther. Let me open it up to questions from members of the committee first. Mr. Bowman.
Van, is this just on the, it looks like it's just going to be on the one side of the street?
Yes, sir.
The north side, I guess that is?
Yes, and it's continuous because sidewalks go all the way down to the mall and actually down to Eastern Road and wraps around. It really will complete a sidewalk continuation that this section of Old Welsh Road has.
So even over the, what we see in the picture going over that kind of
Yes,
down
it was over the
hill.
hill, down, and terminate at Fitchburg Road.
Certainly a good idea. It's too narrow there. Someone who's ridden my 10-speed up that hill many times, you just know where to go for a bike, certainly, and certainly for pedestrians, too. So it's a good idea, and I support it.
Thank you.
Questions or comments from Commissioner Myers?
Thank you. As Director Strother said, this was revisited. It's been talked about for many years, but it was really revisited at the mall meeting. And given the new movie theater that's going to come to the mall, it's really going to increase foot traffic, which is what we want to do. And many people mentioned this particular stretch of road from Coolidge down to Fitzwatertown, where most of it there are no sidewalks on either side. It's extremely narrow and really very dangerous to even walk it. And this would be a huge enhancement for the township and the neighborhood. Clearly, it's all residential along the sidewalks, and it's really very dense. So we're hoping that all the stars align. This is, a section of this is in President Luker's ward, and the lower section closer to Fitzwatertown is in the ward that I represent. So we're really hoping that it moves forward, and this is really the beginning of some money to take a look at it.
Thank you, Commissioner Myers. Other questions first from members of the board? Commissioner Schreiber.
I understand this is just a drawing, but I mean, representative of what it might look like. So it's
Yes.
not really what's going, a rendering, thank you for the word. But it has, in addition to the sidewalks, it has new retaining walls put up there.
Yes.
And so are we looking at this in terms of adding, like taking down what exists and putting up walls as well? So
Yes.
it's not just sidewalks that we're looking at?
Correct.
Can I expand on that?
Please.
There's
I
only-
want to extend it to my house with the retaining walls.
There's only one property, and you can see it, that has a retaining wall. That's the only retaining wall along the stretch of road on that side. And because these properties are set up, and some of them are actually kind of a hill down to the road, some kind of retaining wall would be necessary, right?
Yes. Yes.
So the grants or whatever that we're looking at, trying to obtain at someday to do the sidewalks, we're also looking at enough to cover the wall. There's actually two walls, I guess, that are being replaced.
There's one that's, the rounded one is sort of in better condition. There's one that's a little more overgrown and is a mix of railroad ties and
Yeah.
stone.
Yeah.
Which
But
we
I
all
mean,
know
it's
railroad
gonna
ties.
help.
Right.
Yeah.
And-
So it's
and-
for both.
I'm sorry?
So it's for that piece too?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And this is just, there are no local tax dollars involved. This is asking your permission through the Township Manager's Office to submit an application for these funds. And it's just a feasibility study just to unearth all of the items that have to be done to successfully complete this. It's not to construct it, it's just to do a feasibility study to identify all of the components that need to be done to achieve this.
Thank you.
Other commissioners on the committee first? Moving on to the board in general. Commissioner Thompson, do you have a question?
Are we going to consider expanding this a little bit to include crosswalks? Because it looks like we have a ADA curb cut at Lukens Ave, and we have an ADA curb cut over on Fleming. I just didn't know, are we planning on maybe adding crosswalks to the scope across those two side streets?
We can look into that. That'll be part of the engineering studies. I would have to rely on the experts where's the best place, because with a crosswalk, you have to have a place to go. And on the opposite side, there aren't any sidewalks.
So I thought there was a place to go at least across, doesn't the sidewalk connect to the mall?
Down at Coolidge Avenue.
At Coolidge's house.
Coolidge Avenue.
There
I
are
might-
already sidewalks from Coolidge to the mall.
Right, okay.
And just to add, on the opposite side of the retaining wall, it's Willow Hill Elementary School, which is a elementary school-age children need better safe passage getting to that crosswalk at Coolidge Avenue where there's a crossing guard.
Questions from other commissioners? from our audience. Oh, I'm sorry, Commissioner Klein.
So you said that this was discussed back in 2015? I guess
Yeah,
but that was only the 2700 block?
Only for the 2700 block. There wasn't a graphic presentation as it is today, but in 2015, we did have it in the CDBG budget for just the limited block of the 2700
And what was the
block.
purpose of just doing this 2700 block at that time?
Because that was in the eligible area for CDBG funds.
Is the rest of it in the eligible area for CDBG money?
For the planning, for doing planning studies, it is a permissible expenditure.
Outside of the community development area?
No, I'm saying that the whole study area is a 2700 block down to Fitzwater Town Road.
Right, but
The application
that's part of the 2800 block, correct?
No, my project scope begins at the 2700 block all the way down to Fitzwater Town Road.
Right, but down to Fitzwater Town is part of the 2800 block.
Yes.
Is all of that part of the community development area?
No.
So, but you're saying the grant money can be used outside of, the grant money for the feasibility study can be used outside of the community development area?
For administrative purposes, doing a planning study, yes.
Okay, and what about construction at a later time?
You cannot use CDBG funds.
So where would the funds come for the sidewalks to be constructed outside of?
That's part of this effort to do a feasibility study. Right now, the Montgomery County has a local share account that's available. It's $200,000. That's an eligible grant opportunity that we should pursue for the 2000 block all the way down to Fitzwater Town Road. Right. And there's others to be pursued. There's a multimodal. This is just to kind of really unearth not only the mechanics of how to build it, but also funding sources to construct it.
But all of those would require some match, the two that you mentioned, the county implementation grant program and also the multimodal would include a grant match.
Absolutely.
Of some sort, whether it be in kind or something.
Yes, it requires some kind of match, and most of it is local.
I guess I'm concerned about this because just this time last year, we had a subdivision at the 2800 block of Old Welsh Road, and it was advocated for the developer that there would be a sidewalk waiver given. And now we're coming back just a year later to put in sidewalk, or to potentially put in sidewalks in this very area. And the same arguments we're talking about today with retaining walls and sidewalks, some of us didn't care about that and we wanted the sidewalks put in, but that was, there was the commissioner in that ward was looking at it and just, wanted the waiver to go because there were no other sidewalks, and now we're looking at putting sidewalks in. I just, the inconsistency is a concern because we should just be putting in sidewalks. We should not be giving waivers for these type of things. And especially given the fact that in 2015, we were talking about sidewalks in this area. I mean, given that it's the 2700 block, but just now there's a potential that the township's going to have to afford putting money out to do sidewalks where we could have had a developer doing at least those two properties, the one that was the existing home and also the subdivided property. So just food for thought going forward. I mean, the feasibility study is what it is, but if that can be done in the community development grant money, but the actual construction later on is concerning.
Sure.
And also one other question, I mean, have the neighbors been talked to about the maintenance of those sidewalks and the walls? And I mean, if this were to happen, is the township going to be relieved of having to have any kind of follow through or maintenance on those retaining walls and the sidewalks?
We've talked about the next step was to do a meeting with the residents and those directly impacted, but because of the time constraint that the application is due in 2 weeks, sequentially you had to get the resolution to attach to the application. But the next step would be for the elected officials to reach out to the residents that are impacted.
Right. Well, I give you props for wanting to find areas to make the area walkable, but it would have been great if we had started that last year when we had the subdivision in front of us.
I agree with you. I hear your point.
Thank you, Commissioner Klein. Any other? Commissioner Myers.
Since I'm the commissioner in the area that Commissioner Klein is referring to, At the time, this was long before the mall had come up with their new development, and it would have been, at the time, a sidewalk to nowhere, which is exactly what was stated at the meeting, and I couldn't see making the homeowner put those sidewalks in when there were no sidewalks nearby. And in fact, I remember stating that if it's part of a plan, then that's something different. But there was no way at that time to see into the future. We can always look back and have regrets, but nevertheless, this is needed for the full length, not just in front of one or two properties.
If I could say, I mean, we didn't have to look into the future. We only had to look back to 2015, where it was already talked about extending them in the 2,700 block. So there was already an idea of bringing sidewalks, which, once again, I believe sidewalks are a good idea. But now we're looking at, instead of the developer having the cost, but we're looking at the taxpayer potentially having some cost involved in putting sidewalks where we could have had them put in through a land development application. So we didn't have to look into the future. We only had to look back to 2015.
Commissioner Gillespie.
I just wanted to comment about the wall and taking care of it. I do know that Jenkintown Road, all that wall that was put in from, actually, I think Tyson Avenue, the sidewalk, and then the wall starts at Ardsley, no, not Ardsley, at Roberts, and that wall has been fine. Was done when Mike was commissioner, probably about 16 years ago. I think the people are very happy, and the wall is in great shape, and we got it the same way.
Thank you, Commissioner Gillespie. All right, there are other questions, comments from commissioners, questions, comments from the audience? Hearing none, let's vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Moving on to PA2. This is a motion, we're going to consider a motion to request approval to submit a grant application to the Delaware Valley Regional Planning Commission for the Transportation and Community Development Initiative to create an Eastern Road Revitalization Plan, and I so move.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Director Strother, I know that you have that sketched out in here. Do you want to
Continue on. Yes.
give us a little overview?
Thank you again, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. In 2009, the Board of Commissioners applied for a grant with Montgomery County Planning Commission to prepare a Montgomery County revitalization plan. Specifically, it was titled for the Roslyn community, but probably a better title is talking about the commercial corridor along Eastern Road. That was completed in 2010, and there's a need to update that plan. And what you have in front of you is the map of extending that corridor from Hamilton Avenue all the way up to Old Welsh Road to do a study and update the improvements that were done since 2010. I have a copy of the 2010 plan here. If anyone's interested, through the manager's office, we can send it to you for your attention. But outside of that is just a request for the same funding source with the Delaware Valley Regional Planning Commission to apply for a grant, and there's no local township tax applied for this. Is all funds outside of the township, and it's just a request to apply for the grant.
Well, I can tell you, as a member of the Vacant Property Review Board, we certainly look at this section of the Eastern Road Corridor a lot, and so I'd be very interested to see this plan if this all moves forward. Any questions or comments from members of the committee first?
John.
Commissioners in general. President Luke. Manager Manfredi. Hello.
Mr. Chairman, I just want to make sure we're clear on a couple of things. Mr. Strother, you were saying that the match for this would be CDBG money, correct?
Yes, sir.
I just want everyone to understand that if this were to come, it would be CDBG monies as the match, which is one of the reasons why we're showing it as the Eastern Road Corridor, because Roslyn is not in an area that can take that money.
And that, as we've discussed, is within the acceptable parameters of use of CDBG funds, so.
And the point further is this: if for some reason Mr. Strother would find out that we couldn't use CDBG money, the deadline on both of these grants is the 20th, so we wanted authorization to move forward next Thursday But should he find some reason that we couldn't do this, we would still be able to move forward. You'd have to find the match money some other way. I just want to make sure everyone understands that.
Understood, and appreciated, the clarification is appreciated. Any other questions, comments? Commissioner Schreiber?
Quick question. So this is going from the corridor from...
Susquehanna?
Yeah, it looks like it's from like the train station. It looks like a little bit over.
Yes.
From all the way down to Welsh Road.
Yes.
Okay, so it's just extending a little what we had in there before. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. Just wanted to clarify.
It actually starts in Ward 11, Trotter Avenue.
You
Yep.
get to be in there.
So
Look at you.
something for everybody.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments from commissioners? From our audience?
Laura Lehman, 1431 Bryant Lane. Did I understand that this section was covered in the original Roslyn revitalization plan, or it was not covered at all?
Director Strother, if you want to go ahead.
Yes, it was covered.
So what are we doing that's different? Have we implemented all the things from that plan, or are we doing something different?
Oh, we're not doing anything different, but there have been improvements following the 2010 plan, and there's a need just to update that plan of what was implemented and also some future goals. As the chairman expressed with the vacant property review committee, there's properties identified. I've not talked to Commissioner Schreiber about some improvements for projects. There's some vacancies that have recently opened up that there's a need to look for future uses for it, for planning purposes only.
Thank you, Director Strother. All right. Manager Manfredi, anything?
After your vote, I just wanted him to stick around for
All right,
a 1 minute update.
Sure he will. All right, then, let's move on to vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
PA2 carries. Moving on to PA3.
Excuse me, sir.
Oh,
Before he gets before the podium, as you recall, he was going to give an update at the request of Commissioner Schreiber on the
that is right. Okay.
summer food plan.
All right.
And we pulled that, but he has literally 1 minute. He has some very good news,
All right.
and I just wanted him to share that.
Separate from our formal agenda, Director Strother, please take it away.
Yes, thank you, Township Manager. Last year, Abington Township, through the approval of the boards, we conducted a summer youth meal program for school-age children ages 1 through 18. I'm pleased to announce that we'll be doing that program again this year. We found new and improved ways to deliver the services. I will provide more updates, but there's been a tremendous amount of help that was been given and leadership through Township Manager, and also the Assistant Township Manager has been very helpful in finding ways to deliver the program. So I'll be providing you more programs but we will be having a program this year operating out of Crestmont Park.
Excellent news. Thank you, Director Strother.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Look forward to hearing more about that. Now we will move on to PA3. Consider a motion to advertise ordinance number 2154, adopting a certain intermunicipal agreement for the purchase of pool chemicals and supplies among numerous municipalities, and I so move.
Second.
Director Oles, any enlightenment?
Pretty straightforward. It's very similar to the fuel oils consortium, and it just allows us to enter into a group of already pool operators that are buying chemicals, same chemicals we would buy anyway. Just get them at a cheaper price because we're expanding the bulk.
It's a pool of pool operators.
Then you got it.
Right then. Any questions from the committee or the board in general? Commissioner Sanchez.
Wholeheartedly support this, and thank you. And I know we've been discussing this a lot, over the years at the Finance Committee, because there's always multiple purchases all over, and can we get some sort of better deal? So great, thanks for carrying that through.
Always a big fan of consortia, indeed. Any other questions from members of the committee, or the board, or the audience? Hearing none, all those in favor? Aye. PA3 carries. Thank you again, Director Oles. Moving right along to PA4. To consider a motion to accept the Watershed Restoration and Protection Program grant from the Department of Community and Economic Development, DCED, in the amount of $100,000 to support the Ardsley Wildlife Sanctuary project. The grant is for the construction and engineering relating to the expansion of a stormwater basin and stream bank stabilization at the Ardsley Wildlife Sanctuary, and I so move.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Welcome, I think it's your first public affairs meeting, Director Montgomery.
Thank you.
Engineer Montgomery, Director and Engineer.
I have a couple titles, a couple hats. Did you have any questions? This came through last year. I believe it was self-explanatory. Hopefully you recall the project because the next item on the agenda is also related to that.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions from members of the committee or the board in general? Public comments from the audience? Hearing none. All those in favor? Aye. PA4 passes, and we'll move on to PA5. Now that was efficient. PA5, consider a motion to approve the application for a grant from the Ardsley Wildlife Sanctuary Basin Retrofit and Stream Restoration in the amount of $250,000, and I so move.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. Again, any questions for Engineer Montgomery from the committee or board in general? Audience? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
PA5 carries. Thank you again.
Thank you very much.
And finally, PA6, consider a motion authorizing the proper township official to contract with Louis F. Biazzi Landscape Contractor for the 2018 service year in amount not to exceed $100,000 for the Business District Landscape Maintenance Contract. Funds will be drawn from Economic Development Capital Accounts reserved for this purpose, and I so move.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Pretty straightforward. Any comments, Mr. Manager, before we go to, all right. Commissioner Bowman, start us off.
Is this contract subject to competition, or how come Mr. Biasi is is this like a bid situation, or what's the story there?
3 years ago, you solicited bids, and in however you do things, instead of simply awarding the bid and entering into a contract each of the 3 years, you awarded the bid, did not enter into a contract, and then each year you authorize the work to be done in accordance with the bid. It's just how you do it.
So is that coming to an end, that arrangement, or?
The way we will do it in the future is we will go out to bid. It'll be a 3-year bid and a contract awarded for each of the 3 years, not coming back each year thereafter.
Okay.
It's just how it was done in the past.
Thank you.
So this is the third year of the 3
This
years.
is the third and final year of this, and then next year we would go back out and just handle it a little differently.
Questions or comments first from members of the committee? Commissioners in general, Commissioner Klein.
Yeah, so, Mr. Biazzi there was some zoning or code issues with his property. Have those been rectified?
I'm going to ask Lauren to step in, but my understanding was that they have been rectified by Mr. Biazzi. There was an appeal period. I don't know if any grieving party had filed an appeal within the timeline or not.
To my knowledge, there has been no appeal filed, and I don't.
That would be resolved.
The property was out of compliance when certain things were brought to the property owner's attention. He rectified some of the issues that had the property out of compliance. Code enforcement and zoning had gone out there and determined that after he made these changes, it was in compliance. I don't think it's been appealed.
So at this point, his property is in compliance, and we haven't had any other further complaints from property owners? Because I know at one
No,
point
we've had further complaints, but the property's in compliance, and the property owner who had been complaining was notified of the appeal process, and we do not know if they availed themselves to the appeal process. We haven't received anything, and so it's run. So unless it's just a timing issue, we don't think they appealed it.
And did they file all the proper permits and everything to do whatever they had to do to rectify the situations?
They did.
It's my ward, and this person doesn't even live in the ward. So, I mean, actually lives quite a distance from this property. So there's more to the issue than what you hear.
What person? I don't even know.
Well, you said a
I just know there was a- I just know there was an issue with the property.
Person, I used the wrong word, complainant.
I'm not even sure I know who you're talking about, but I do know that the
Mr.
there's
Klein,
an issue with the property.
Mr. Klein, to answer your question, it has been resolved.
It has been resolved.
If there's, Solicitor Gallagher, if there's any other information, or Solicitor Clark, if there's any other information regarding this that's sort of germane to this decision that is researched over the next week, please, obviously inform us in advance of Thursday.
Certainly.
Any other questions or comments from commissioners? From the audience?
Laura Lehman, 1431 Bryant Lane, and I will continue to protest economic development or any other funds being used for specific properties and not for all properties. So that, it just, to me, is not okay to be doing somebody's hardscaping for them and they're planting for them and all the rest of the stuff for them, while other properties actually end up paying for that. So it's not okay.
Thank you for your comment. All right. No other comments or questions? All those in favor? Aye. PA 6 passes, and that concludes our formal agenda. Comments from the public regarding the general purview of public affairs?
Laura Lehman, 1431 Bryant Lane. So you have been offering citations to people who have been here for many years. I recently sent you a letter on one of those and why they should be giving an apology instead of getting a citation. And I am currently writing one for another. So if you have a plan for the coming meeting for any citations, I am going to be sending you a letter. I would like to have a reply to that letter. I actually would like to hear from many of you, your thoughts about the letter, because the particular person has had such an effect on so many lives in such a detrimental way, and yet every time we complained, we were told, well, actually, we often were ignored or told to sit down rudely, and then that person was usually elevated in some way, either in your end of the meeting comments or immediately afterwards. And that really makes all of you who sat there, listened to those complaints, never tried to do anything to change them, but it makes you complicit in the damage that was done to many families in the affairs of these people. I also wanted to ask about sorry that the group left. I wanted to ask about the separation between Star Communities and the EAC, because my understanding is that Star Communities is a separate nonprofit that is owned by certain individuals who also may be EAC members, but there seems to be a complete, I went to an EAC meeting and it might as well have been a Star Communities meeting. I see they gave you the award, but are you on the Star Communities? I assume that you have a member, at least one or two, on the board. Are there commissioners on the board of the Star Communities nonprofit?
Normally, I wouldn't entertain this, but I will answer briefly. Star Communities is a rating system. It's not. I don't know if it's involved with any nonprofit, but it's a national rating system, and the EAC. It's been an EAC initiative to get us a Star Communities rating.
So my understanding was that Star Communities were set up as 501c3s separately. Not the case? I'll need to inform. I'll inform myself more. Thank you. I'll find out more about it then. Okay. And then the other thing is in regard to the comments that I made earlier about needing to know what's happening in these lawsuits when we're being sued. And I think Commissioner Sanchez, for instance, can ask his attorney, Mr. Clark, for the same information that is available out there. And all of you should know this. This is part of, you know, what you need to run this township. You need to know what's going on. What's in those lawsuits is unbelievable, and you need to know that stuff. So I would, for one, appreciate if you would institute regular reports on any legal matters that are available not only to all of you, but to the public as well. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. And with that, if there are no other public comments, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Adjourned.